Jess, we're gonna go policy first.
Policy first. Okay.
Are you good?
Jim, do you want to try and connect?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if we have any.
Dave, are we on?
We're live. Okay.
Oh, I thought you said we were on.
Maybe.
So we're going to start with policy committee first. We have no public comments, so we can get right into the agenda. Let's see. Are you able to project? The first thing to talk about, as always, is the policy update plan, and there are some things to note on here. We are doing second read of the policies we talked about last time and approved through first read at the last board meeting. And we're going to do first read of a few of the others that came out of the homelessness survey around transportation, enrollment of students. We also added, it was a little bit late, but we added in around functions to talk about adding a 2/3 vote when it comes to suspending policy. Currently, it's the majority. We're still waiting a little bit. We want more information on the grooming and dress. There were parts of it that we needed for the homelessness audit, but also some things we just wanted to compare with what's in the individual handbooks at the different schools, and some work that students and teachers had done around wording for dress, and we're just trying to consolidate that so that there's not duplicate text in multiple places, and that whenever there is, it's consistent. And then obviously we're not ready for prime time yet for the bathrooms. So we did a facilities tour this week where all the board members were able to, almost of them were able to walk through the high school facilities just to get a better understanding of what we have, how this looks for students in there, how we're set up currently under the current policy. We're also going to be holding an executive session with our solicitor to talk over some legal precedent. And as always, we continue to look into safety concerns that are being sent from the community around almost every aspect of the bathrooms, and investigating what other schools are doing too, that we've been doing and will continue to do that. But we just aren't ready for the first read yet. There's too much to get done. So with that being said, we're going to jump into the first policy. Are we going to go to the second read? Hold on, I lost the agenda. We're going to go into first read first. Okay. So first read right now is policy 003. The change that was made in here is what's in green. So when it came to suspending a policy, like in the need of legal requirements or things like that, we made that a 2/3 instead of a majority. Just because we feel like something like that needs a little more oomph behind it, that the board is fully in agreement that we're going to take this sort of step. Everything else is the same. So it's still a majority to adopt, amend, and approve a policy. And it's still the 2/3 to, where are we? Work procedures. 2/3.
So what would be?
I'm sorry. Oh, procedures, okay, sorry. Procedures are still a 2/3 vote to make changes, whereas policies are still the majority.
So what would we consider a board procedure?
That's a really good question. I thought it was defined.
So that's new too, even though it's not in green?
No, that's all the same.
Oh.
No, the only thing that's changed is what is in green.
It allows to suspend, my understanding is it allows to suspend a board, what we have here, or different.
So like procedures are like,
Tabling a motion?
or like posting the agenda ahead, like with the notice and things like that, like the procedures of how we're running, how we're sending information out to the public, etc.
This was used last year to move just skip the first and second read.
Right.
But then you should define it. I'm for the majority still, I don't see the need to move it to 2/3, but if you're gonna move it to the 2/3, then you probably wanna be specific, cause you're thinking of a specific reason as to what's motivated behind it, which is fine, but then I think you need to have a definition, more specifics for what you are referring the 2/3 to be.
Procedures versus
Yeah,
policy.
I mean, I would,
Yeah.
I thought it was in there because if you say you had a policy that there's no controversy, and we just wanna get it done, and nobody speaks against it, we would vote if they need more than a majority on that, so it's just time statements. Then it won't count with 2/3, those types of things, but we find it defining. We'll come back to that.
Well, no,
Is there
I
any-
mean, we should keep answering the question so we can all understand what it means
Sure.
then. So I think, what we just switched to the 2/3 is suspending procedure or policy, so this is both. That would be something where if we're like, we're going to suspend the dress policy for some reason, we want a 2/3 vote on that as opposed to the majority. And then procedures are like what Ron alluded to, if we're not following normal board procedure around first read, second reads, RFP, whatever our procedures are around getting contracts set up, pushing policy through, et cetera, that this should be a 2/3 approval that it's okay to do this,
So
as
in
opposed to a majority.
Word docs, in our policy section, the first
think it's
section is local board procedures, so I'm assuming
Right.
it would be everything
it's
in
the-
there.
Yes, that would be the procedure part of it, thank you.
So administrative regulations, authority and powers, functions, membership.
wait, can you read
It's
that?
everything we've been doing with the procedure policy, we
So
wanna
right here,
suspend that.
local board
Mhm.
procedures,
Mhm.
it's all these here.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, we'll go down. We'll rush it. And basically allows you suspending it at 0 on procedures, local procedures.
And would it work just to hyperlink procedures to this? That way, if you're looking for specific reasons, like, as we had just happened here in this meeting, we said, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And we even had to think about, well, what does that mean? So that, if we are even seeking clarity,
Okay.
community's gonna have a need to seek clarity, so putting something in there that allows them to quickly then get to this, so that they can see exactly what is a board procedure and what are the things that need to be suspended,
Right.
because that would help us, and that would help the community be clear about what we're doing.
And I think what's a little confusing is that you have a policy called local board procedures, but within the policy it says procedure or policy. So I think that's where, we might wanna take a look a little bit more at 006 to see what is considered, and we can talk a little bit more about that.
Is that something, then this would stay at a first read until the next committee?
Yeah, I know something.
My
Okay.
understanding is we can waive any of those procedures with just the majority vote, or any of these, or, which I.
We can also waive any, we can also suspend any policy with just a majority vote too.
Yes, you can,
And
but
so we were
that's,
trying to find the balance.
And I think that'll help us make healthier policies in general.
Right.
If we have to get more of us on board, that's never a
Well,
bad
it
thing.
still would be it would still be majority to pass a policy.
Right.
This is
Or
not-
repeal.
Agreed.
or repeal.
Right, so the normal process of developing a policy, once we go through that, it's a majority to approve it and
Right.
implement it.
So below-
It's more if we decide that we need to, in any sort of situation, suspend a policy, that we want more than the majority for.
It does contradict the one down, it says board procedures shall be adopted, amended, or repealed by a 2/3 vote, but you can suspend it with a half, with,
2/3, yeah.
so
Why?
right now, if you wanna repeal a board procedure, you need 2/3, but if you wanna suspend it, you only need.
Yeah, that is.
Why not though, if you guys are wanting to do the 2/3 on this, why not also include it to pass policy? What is the, in your minds, what is the reasoning for the 2/3 for this, but then not for policy? Just curious.
To approve.
Yeah, like if you're wanting to do everything with all the board, the policy procedures, the board procedures, but not to pass a policy, why? What is, like, I guess I'm just curious, what is the defining?
I'm confused with the board procedures to repeal it, would be 2/3. Well, why would you be able to suspend it? It's the same thing as repealing it
Right.
with just a half.
But even then what's the difference of just even to pass? Like, why not, if you're gonna go with the 2/3, why not go
Those
the
are
whole way?
procedures versus policies,
Yeah.
is the difference.
I mean,
It's
it's
been
not,
set up that way, we can look at it.
I see your point. I think what we're trying to get at is anything that's done quickly, we want more than the majority vote. But things that are following the normal process, we can still be the normal majority. So when we're doing, I would assume that like when board policies are adopted, amended, or repealed, I guess that's probably where we're getting hung up though. I see your point. I read that first part where we made the change as things that need to be done quickly for whatever reason. And it needs to be a larger agreement that sort of quick movement is okay.
quick movement to change.
Right.
Yeah, but
I mean, and
it's
it,
a valid question.
And I feel like then
Yeah.
if you're gonna, then if we're gonna stick with the 2/3, but you wanna keep with the majority for policy, then maybe getting rid of the repeal. And that should just be a majority.
I think that would make sense.
Yes.
Wait,
So I
this
think
is
that's
how
what
our
we need to-
policy reads right now. Board procedures shall be adopted, amended, or repealed by 2/3 vote.
But it only-
Procedures.
But it only needs a half, majority to suspend it, which is kind of like repealing it for
Right.
2 weeks or for a month.
What if we could
I
list
don't
them
think
in
that we've actually
order,
followed
like
that either.
pass,
No, we thought-
repeal?
We haven't, we've been doing 5-4.
Let's look into it, because I do feel like repeal and suspend
Yeah.
have different meanings, so too, like, and this is where when I read the paragraph where we made the change, this is something where we're like, something is happening, we need to sort of work outside of our normal process for this one time, as opposed to a repeal is, this is off,
I know what
it's
you're,
done,
I know what you're
we're
saying,
never-
I'm just saying it, technically what it's saying is adopted, amended, or repealed. I'm sure that's not how we've been doing it.
For procedures.
Procedures, not policy.
So, yes.
Is that,
Yeah, 'cause that's
that's
just
less
saying
board
procedures.
policy.
It's a little confusing, that's why I want to take a look at it. We can definitely.
And we'll add clarifying, because in my head, it did have two distinct, different functions, but with everyone's reading through it in their comments, we need to clarify that more, the difference between repealing versus suspending, et cetera. Like, I looked at suspension as not permanent, we need to like halt something in order to get something else done.
Okay.
As opposed to repeal, again, following the normal process, like we're repealing the old policy, we're replacing it with this policy, like I saw that as more permanent.
Sure.
But we'll clarify it a bit more.
We need a table or a
I
chart
think
or
that's
something.
right. I love charts,
Yeah.
so we can. Okay, so we'll bring that one back for first read. Clean that up. Next is. Enrollment of students. Actually, Jen, I'm gonna toss this one to you, if you wanna go through the changes.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll see an enrollment of students, under page 2 under guidelines, it just notes that students who are experiencing educational instability as well as children of active duty military families should be able to immediately enroll in Penridge or permit like advanced enrollment of children of active duty military families. So this, because you'll see here, this is what we require for registration. It's just saying if we're not able to get all of those documents at in the beginning, it gives us the ability to still get these students into school while waiting for the additional documents.
Jen, I know we went through this at a meeting that I think I wasn't at. So if we go back to point 1, do we have a definition of the forms of educational instability somewhere?
We do, yeah. In 251, I actually added that definition to a bunch. It's in 251
Okay.
and we added it in
Okay.
the other policies.
But
And then we're saying no documents? Anybody can just come and say, hey, I have no documents, but just trust me,
No, they need something. They need some type of document. We have to. They're usually typically working with a social worker. We've approved residents. We've done a home visit. So it's just saying that if we don't have all of that in the beginning because of a family getting up and having to move or because of that homelessness component, that we still need to get them into school, get them started, and then ask for those additional and then continue to work on
I
the
guess my question is because in number 2 it clarifies that you have 45 days to produce it, but in number 1, it says even if the student or parent
Mhm.
is unable to produce required documents. So it seems like that's,
Well, there might be
For
students
however
coming
long.
from like we talk about the Ukraine a lot, where they come, they might not have any documents and have left quickly, they don't have birth certificates, things like that. There might be some documents
Right.
that we would never get, because they're just lost.
And they're also looking to contact us.
Yeah, so we have a homelessness
Yes.
liaison that we're working with. So we definitely, there are ways that we're able to, look at residency. You know, like I said, we're able to do home visits. Typically, you know, we are working with a social worker, so it's, anyone just can't come in and say, you know, because I'm educationally unstable, that's, you know, I need to go to school here. We have other safeguards in place, for that.
It does almost like read like that. That's the only part, because I feel like the educational instability, the definition had like the homelessness and the foster care,
Yep.
but then it still continues to say and other forms of educational instability. So that's where I still feel like even with the definition, it didn't stop with the homeless. In 251, I think it still says and other forms of educational instability. So then again, it still seems like there's an openness to, like, if it's homelessness and they can't provide the documents, that's understandable. I know you said like the social worker works with them to try to help and aid that process,
Yep.
but it's still just, like, again, it's not clear enough. So I feel like what does involve other forms of educational instability? That's where my biggest hang up is.
So we have it in 251, where, and we moved that, we copied it into the other policy too for that same reason, Jordan, where,
Mhm.
because we had the same question in the other policy, where it's homelessness, dependency related to child protective services and juvenile matters, delinquency, if disclosed by the students.
But I feel like I read it somewhere else, even in 251, where it has like the definition, but then somewhere in there it also still states and other forms of educational, there it is, in the very beginning. So like you have the definition, but then, and maybe it doesn't matter, maybe that this, with the purpose, maybe it's okay, but in the purpose it says, the board recognizes the challenges encountered by students experiencing homelessness, foster care, and other educational instability. So,
And that's
But
what's
it
spelled in the
defines
definition.
educational.
They
okay.
just don't put the whole definition everywhere, because it's long, like there's,
There's only three, like the only difference that you add to the definitions besides homelessness and foster care is the adjudication of dependency related to child protective services, juvenile matters, delinquency. So there's only those three are basically the only other additional forms of educational instability, correct? Is that
Correct.
how?
Yes,
Okay.
and then the next page then talks about homeless children and youth and what does that entail? Children and youth who are sharing a house, have primary nighttime residence, living in cars, parks. So then that homeless children and youth piece is then explained a little bit more. I know it's not talking to educational instability, but yes. And if you want, I can take that definition again. If you'd like me to put it into this policy, I can do that as well, where it lists, you know, that's what these sections, homelessness and adjudication, and then foster care. I can add that in as well.
well, does it link to 251? Like, I can't do the links.
There is, go up to the top, let me see.
Policy
See, in
251
so
is listed.
it is here, yeah, it's listed here.
Mhm.
So it is something that is referred to within the policy
And then these
as a legal
footnotes,
definition.
5 and 14 that are at the end of it,
That's
the
specific
end
to
of
school
number
code.
one. Oh, that's school code, okay.
So help me with the paragraph, the second one under guidelines. So it's talking about the district shall not enroll a student until the parent has submitted proof of the student's age, residence, and immunizations.
So
But
like
then
our,
it goes on to say we still have to
so that
accept
is,
them, right?
that is what we do for any student your typical student that's coming in to register. Those are the different, proofs of residency, immunization, they have to prove, residency, immunization, they have to do a parental registration statement, so all students have to have that. What this is saying is that, except however, the students that are experiencing educational instability or children of active duty military families, we might not have access to all of those documents when they come to us. And it's pretty much saying that we still need to we still need to provide an education to these students, even though we may not have all of these documents for these two areas of children.
So the number one is educational instability, but not necessarily for active duty military families, right? They're not connected.
Yeah, they list them separately. So the first one is the homelessness, foster care, and the educational instability. The second one is then also is talking about children of active duty military families.
So my question is around the first one, foreign wars,
Yeah.
kids coming from other countries, if they can't produce immunization records, are our children at risk?
So what we do is I don't know which one it is, but there's one immunization they have to have before coming in. So if a parent comes to us and says, we don't have that. So what we're able to do is we have a clinic that we're able to send students to. It's a free clinic where they're able to get that immunization before coming into school. It might not have a list of all of them, but that's typically we'll talk to our nursing department and find out which ones that they absolutely need for coming into school.
Okay.
And but that's not required though still, correct? Like you can offer that, but that's not technically required. You would still have to accept them even if they don't go to the clinic and.
I mean, that is something that we do. If we don't
Okay.
have any type of immunization, and interestingly enough, typically we'll get immunization records. It might not just be the entire fleet of them, but we typically will get them. But if not, we will usually ask to get that before they enter school.
But we're just offering a grace period around it. So if they can't find the documentation, then they
Usually
work with the nurse to be like,
we
well,
set them
they will get the, I don't know
Yeah.
how safe it is to get it again, but in certain cases, if they can get it again, or if it's one that they didn't have, because these are also, again, families that are struggling right now in
Yeah.
often cases. The first situation where they might not have a pediatrician, they might not have the money to pay for the immunizations, and so we're giving it that grace period.
I mean, I guess.
But they
technically
work with the
could opt
nurse
out.
to make sure it's safe, you
Yeah.
know, like they wouldn't want them to come in with some of the more critical vaccines
Right.
missing.
Like we're not gonna
Right.
have outbreaks or.
Right,
I'm
correct.
sure they're gonna stop
Right.
people.
But either way, I mean, I don't know, kids a lot of times do religious exemptions always
There's
anyway,
that,
and there's
yes.
plenty of not homeless children.
Right, they can opt out for religious reasons,
Come
yeah.
in without them
Mhm.
too. So are there any more questions on this policy?
No, you are gonna add the,
I can add the
that'd be
definition.
We
great.
can do the definitions across, I guess, all of them that discuss the
Yeah, I did them for first
educational
read one.
instability,
which is
yeah.
this one.
Okay, perfect.
But we can add that, like we did last time. Are you okay with us adding it and still going forward with first read, like we did the last time?
Mhm.
Okay. Alright, so next is transportation. I'm gonna have you do this one too, Jen. I will have to say too, though, we did finish the homelessness audit and passed beautifully using these versions of the policies as the guidelines, so that's encouraging.
That's one.
The homelessness
We
audit.
had
Oh,
it
yeah.
on the
Yeah.
side. Yeah, it went very well. Okay, so then this is 810. You'll actually see there's no change of wording within policy 810. There are just policy references. So when I talk about references, it's all the legal citations. So I'm going to talk about 251, and then Jessica Cross, our Director of Transportation, is here. I thought it'd be interesting to have her talk about the other change of this policy regarding cameras. Yeah, that we'll look at. So the first one you'll see here that just policy 251 under 20, that's listed here. So that's there. So, and then the other one is,
Using the link.
It'll link when it's up and running.
yeah, once it's
Compile.
335.1. So then the other one that was linked was right here, number 11, 335. Oh no. 3.45.1. So Jessica's going to explain 3.345.1 what that is, but you'll see, like I said, there's actually no wording changes. You'll just see some of the green as far as when they shift around, the numbers shift around, so you'll just see the updates to that. So I'll have Jessica explain the sidearm camera.
So we have been actually talking about the sidearm camera for a few years, and we did pass that, and we have those installed on our school buses currently. They were installed this past summer. So every one of our school buses, large, medium, and small, have a stop arm camera. So if someone runs through the red lights, it takes a picture and sends a citation to them in the mail. That has previously been operating on the same laws as the red light cameras as a traffic light. And so now there's just new information here that's specific to the school bus and the stop arm camera. So the added language in here just basically outlines everything that we're currently doing. It just allows the district to have these if they so choose. It does not force a district to have them. We do currently have them. They're operated through a company called Bus Patrol. And so when those violations occur, the camera takes a picture of the license plate going through. It takes a video of before and after they enter the stop arm there. That is reviewed by Bus Patrol, and then those violations are sent to each of our 5 police departments, whichever jurisdiction the violation happened in. They're reviewed by a police officer, and they're approved from there. And once they're approved from there, then the citation goes out to the person or the owner of the vehicle that it's registered to. It is a $300 fine, and that cost is that money is shared between the police department, the school district, and Bus Patrol. This is something when we put it in, it was pretty well free to the district. The cost that we pay to Bus Patrol was the same exact cost that we pay for our routing system, and Bus Patrol pays for our routing system, so we have broken even on that. And in the 6th year of our contract with them, we will have actually a 3-year, so we have a 6-year contract that we're paying them over 5 for. So this basically just outlines that the school districts are allowed to have these, and it outlines exactly what the violation is, the penalty, and the process that I just explained to you. So that's exactly what's written in here, so there's 0 changes to what we're doing. We're already doing this and have this in place.
So just wanted to explain that because that was new to this number 11, so we wanted to explain what that was.
Where is this?
So it's linked, you see number 11, that's what she just talked about. So it's in the school code, but then as you go down, you'll see references. It's just number 11, like at the bottom there. That just means that it's referencing what Jessica had been talking about.
And it will link, like it'll hyperlink.
It'll hyperlink once it's like
But it's not,
active.
okay.
Right.
Yeah, when it's in draft, it doesn't, but then once we get it sent to the SBA to upload, everything will be linked. So
I did print a copy of it if you want to take this and make a copy for the members.
Well, at some point.
Any idea how many citations?
Yeah.
Hundreds per month.
How
Oh
many?
my God,
Hundreds
hundreds.
per
In
month.
Penrith.
In Penrith.
Wow, okay.
Wow. Well, I just wanted to say thanks, like,
Yeah.
to you specifically and everybody part of your department. You guys have been like short-staffed and just rocking it, and I know you've been out driving is what I'm hearing on top of all your other responsibilities. How have things been just with like the new contract? Have we been getting more people on? How's that?
We have.
That's
We
great.
have. We have been getting applicants and getting them on board. We had an MOU last year or so that allows us to bring in experienced drivers on the experience rate, and that has saved us money on training as well. We've had quite a few new hires that are fully licensed, 3 of them this year already, that are behind the wheel right now this week.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Are you fully staffed here?
It will be a very, very long until we are fully staffed, but we are moving along. We have, our routes are very tight, so they could eventually be loosened up. And then, of course, we have work at the IU that we would like to bring back into Penridge, and different things like that. So it'll be a very long time before we're full staffed, but we do have breathing room right now. So we are in a much better place than we were 2-3 months ago.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
also wanted to thank you too.
Yes.
You said you were driving and doing all those things, and it's nice that before the bus drivers had to write down the license plate number and get it, and, you know, it's
Yes.
just impossible for them to do, and the added stress. And-
Yes, and then they would have to attend the hearings and,
Yes, I mean,
yes.
So, this is a much better system.
Much
I'm
better.
shocked that it's, is there anything else you need?
She's like, well, shoot, I don't know.
It's slow down. Yeah, it's a key part of our system. But I assume the stress level is a little better.
It's getting there.
Very sympathetic response. Well, thank you for coming to watch.
You're very welcome. Do you need anything else on your list? You're good?
So much welcome.
So again, that was the only updates, Sarah, just updates to the code, some references to the new policy we just put in. Any further questions on the transportation policy? All right, so that's it for first reads. So now we're gonna go to second read, policy 202.
Typically for second read, I'll ask if there's any additional questions from the first read to the second read. What we did was we made sure to add in the definition of educational instability wherever it was noted within any of the policies. I also was specific as far as I believe it was in attendance when we're looking at guardianship, what that looks like for Penridge. But other than that, any further questions or comments regarding the 4 policies that are up for second read?
I had a question on 217. I was curious why it was specifically mentioning Common Core and steels rather than leaving it more broad. So I guess it's halfway down
there.
The second page. It's right above the credits chart.
Under authority.
Or two. A requirement for graduation in that paragraph, which shall be aligned with
added steels.
established state
Yeah.
academic.
We added steels because they're the new requirement in the state of Pennsylvania. So we just added them in, just so everybody's aware. I know we keep talking about them, so we're putting them in multiple places so people can see them.
Is it something that has to be put in there, in the policy?
We didn't list every one. I asked Jen to put it in there, to list it. If you don't want them in there, that's fine.
I'm just asking,
Just a matter
should we
of-
list them all, you know, if we list one, should we be listing others? Is there,
Well, there's Common Core in there, right?
And
Yeah,
co- is that, does it cover, like, it,
It's all there.
so there's,
okay.
That's required by law and state regulation. You're right.
but I guess where my holdup is always around the standards is, you know, again, they're a recommendation and not a requirement, because obviously we're not hitting every single standard that's there. So that's where I guess I get hung up is if you, I guess it doesn't really say required.
It says aligned, so it doesn't mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of a vague term too.
yeah.
Yeah, my question was around, you know, which shall be aligned with established state academic standards, period. And not get specific, but
That's fine.
I just,
Yeah, if
What
they change,
anyone
they
else
come up
thinks.
with new skills in a few years, they're gonna change it.
Right.
Less
State.
than.
So we would look to just go with established state academic standards.
Just keep it. Like,
other comments?
I mean, I'm also still, I was gonna go to 202, but since we're on 217, I'm also still not, you know, in support of, where now it's bumped to 30 credits,
That's for the scholars.
which,
It's a scholars.
so where, and then it has 28 for that. So I guess well, maybe not, maybe this is, because this is still where it's just saying 28, but this isn't really saying specifically where those credits are allotted to. This is just saying that they have to graduate with 28 credits within the policy.
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay. And I guess I'm more curious as for other board members, why do you feel it necessary to increase it from the 24 to the 28?
I don't, so.
I guess, yeah, I just like more clarity on more of like, I guess, the benefit of that to students. Like Ricky and I were talking, I'm gonna steal your words unless you wanna say it, but like she mentioned, like if somebody's motivated enough to like graduate, you know, early, and like they're that motivated to get all their credits and get out there after that. And funny, not that I talked to my extended family, but it's like my third or fourth cousin who is in like the Lancaster County area. My cousin just posted that she graduated early, so now she's able to go out in the workforce, and it was just like timely. But in my mind, I was thinking like if they are that motivated to get done and get out there and get to what their pathway is, I just still feel if we keep some students from, any student, you know, from their pathway to a certain degree, I feel like we have failed. And I know a lot of other districts are doing that, and they have the block scheduling and they have 28 credits. Some, like Palisades, has 24, but a majority have higher. But I guess that's just where do you see like the big benefit in that, I guess? And you don't have to answer it, obviously, but that's.
I think it's adding to that pathway. I mean, in my mind, I'm seeing it as adding to it. We're giving more to our children. We're pushing them to be better in every way. So to me, I feel like it's our duty as like an education institution to do that. I don't see it as like as a negative in my mind.
Well, this would be a negative for my son, he'll graduate 1 year early. He would not have been able to get these credits, missed an entire year of college because he was able to do dual enrollment. He was out of school 9 a.m. his senior year, took dual enrollment, and he's got 3 semesters left, and he's only been there 3 semesters. So there are students that will, you know, affect negatively. My whole objection is anybody who wants to take 28 credits can.
Right.
You could probably
Without
you could
requiring
take
it.
30. I guess you could take 32. Right?
Just like-
So it's not like we're saying you can't. We're not limiting anybody, but I feel like the more requirements we put, the less choice the students have, less flexibility they have. And I did say to Jordan, you know, I know the fear is like, well, then if they're done when they're a junior, with that motivated that they did not even take a study hall once in high school, God bless them. If school's not for you, go work. If school's for you and you want to take a year of college at 17, my same son has a 17-year-old in his grade at college. She's just really smart. She worked hard. She finished early, and she'll be in the workforce at like 20 years old. So I don't see why we would limit them, and I see it as limiting. And to your point, you can still take anything. You know, you can take anything you want. You can stay and take 8 more credits your senior year. My guess would be probably most seniors would, you know, take half of that and maybe get out early. Or I mean, you could still be done in January too. So you still have the kids who will take 4 credits their senior year, and at Christmas they're done. And then they'll have people saying, well, yeah, but we should have them for 4 more months. Well, they think. Yeah, I just.
Does that happen now, even with
Well,
regular classes, that kids are done in January their senior year?
It is a rarity that our
Right.
students are finished in January.
Yeah.
I feel
I
like,
like high school.
yeah.
Most of them. I know.
I feel like my concern about keeping it at 24 is we're gonna make that too easy. You're like, I agree if you don't wanna take study halls, but I feel like the kids who actually like technically graduate a year early are doing more than just not taking study halls. Like they're probably going above and beyond, doing extra classes, doing, I don't know, do you get more credit for AP classes? Like, so your course load can give you that kind of benefit too. It's more than just hours in school. And I feel like if we keep it at 24, just going through class and doing a full course load your junior year, a lot of kids will be done
Yeah,
junior
well,
year. Like they're done. And what do we do? I don't think we graduate them early. Like,
Right, I guess it's real, I mean, we are moving into curriculum, we're going to have this discussion.
Yeah.
We have the high school principals here, but really, I think that the conversation has really been about a Penridge High School experience.
Right.
And that's how the schedule is designed. I'm sure there are kids out there who don't want to stay a senior year, but that's atypical.
And I will say,
Exceptions.
but I also don't think kids are that motivated to do more than they have to too. You know, like I feel like we have a lot of kids who come in late and leave early senior year because they finish up their credits. And to your point, they could be taking more, like they can do more than the minimum requirement, but
Can I
I
answer?
probably don't know.
Well, right now, everyone takes about 6 credits a year, correct? Under the old plan. They get 6, and now we're gonna allow them to get 8.
It's actually
First.
7.
7. So we're going up. And we're going up the same percentage to 28, correct?
Yes, one a year until we get to 28.
So we're not really making them take more, we're filling their schedule, and people can get
But
done early.
moving to block, they're gonna have more opportunities too,
Exactly.
so.
So you're not really, if you kept it at 24, the average student could get out 3.5 years easily, right?
3 years easily.
3 years. I mean, it's-
Yeah.
So we're increasing the amount of credits, so of course you have to increase the graduation requirement.
But you're not just, even if you go to the 28, I know we'll discuss it in curriculum work, it's
Required.
not, why not just make them extra electives then? So that, we offer a lot of
Well,
awesome
things
courses.
Okay, so we're getting to the distribution of the 28.
I think that's
Okay,
okay.
I do think that is some of the things that when we got the examples of the block scheduling, there's too, we can see where there is that flexibility. But when it comes to the 28 credits, I just don't think it's feasible to keep it at 24 and have 4 years of block scheduling. I feel like it's,
But then
It's
you
gonna be
won't
too
allow them,
fast.
you won't allow those students that wanna take dual enrollment, they won't be able to do that because they
Well,
will have
let's-
to take those
let's-
different
let's-
credits.
Let them answer that,
Yeah,
'cause
but
I
I don't
can't
think
answer
it's
that.
true,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I mean, even to
But it
your
revolves
point, if
around the
there's-
28, that's why there's a parallel with
Yeah.
it. So,
So say there's a
you're
student
not
who
just,
does like
you're not
8,
just,
8, and 8.
voting on the 28 credits, there's specifics behind it, so they're
Okay,
connected.
well, Can you answer about the dual enrollment? We can't, I mean, I can't.
What is blocks?
So with the 20, it's not just saying you need 28 credits, right? Behind the 28 credits, there's requirements behind those where you need to take those credits.
Or
But-
4 courses, yeah.
Right, okay? So then if those students wanted to take dual enrollment courses, if you would make those extra courses to fill the block scheduling, you know, like you're saying, like to fill the block scheduling because they'll have more of the percentage, whatever increase now, but we are delegating where they use those credits. They won't be able to just use them on dual enrollment.
But they
We
do
are,
that
you're putting
now.
them, you're placing them.
But they do. Dual enrollment, currently, you could be enrolled in a dual enrollment University of Pittsburgh course by taking your English course taught by one of our teachers. So you can do that right now.
But additionally,
No, that's their
That's part of
course.
their-
And they get dual enrollment and
for that English course,
For
but
the
they,
English
the other
course.
credits that we're requiring with under the 28,
accounting and business. We are building our dual enrollment opportunities even by the teachers who teach, our teachers who are teaching.
will they be built in by the time the 28 and 30 are required?
We already have them and we'll talk about that,
Mhm.
but
So
we
the-
do plan on expanding that.
So the plan is as part of those like 4 required English classes, say if one of them is a dual enrollment class, it counts towards that 4th English credit or how it's distributed. Like
But it's an
we're-
AP course.
Yeah, like if we're requiring 4, they can use dual enrollment to be one of those courses.
I guess I always think of the students, like let's say their pathway is military, and we recently voted on a couple of the survival courses that are offered by the health and PE department. And so I feel like, again, like they would have to use their elective, but not one of these extra credits, but that would be perfect for their pathway on top of that. Like we do offer a lot of courses in that type of pathway, but you would only be limited to take a few whatever electives like you have that you have, like, you know, if you're in band or chorus, those get sucked up from some of those,
4 years.
some other ones, so
Yeah.
that's again just where I'm at, like dual enrollment, that's great to hear about the expansion, but just again, if this is your pathway and there's other courses that would best match and better prepare you.
So here's a wonderful thing that we have been working on, and Jordan, you know a lot about this because you've been part of the curriculum committee for a long time, is we do have pathways. So Chris Dyer has been
working to expand the pathways. So you can go to the technical school and that can be your pathway, and you can still be a well-rounded Penridge graduate that you're ready to participate in the community, right? You could literally go through one of the 5 pathways that we have here and map out all the courses that really will serve you in that pathway. That's why we have them now, so we are trying to get kids to be able to take advantage of opportunities to help support their individual pathway.
So how can
That
they,
is what we're doing.
which is great, then I guess I feel like I need more clarity around, then if what you're saying is gonna be expanded, they can use their pathway, how does that work then with some of the requirements? Like, let's say they're out of their electives because, and they need whatever, how can they use that toward their pathway? Or is that gonna be into consideration, like, these classes would best suit this pathway, so you're gonna be able to not have to take this required, where this credit is supposed to go and can go toward your pathway? Is that?
Well, we have the, 9 and a half electives, kids who go to tech school have 10. I mean, there's a lot of electives that you can choose, but in the pathways, the core courses are part of their pathways. So if I want to be an engineer, I know which science and math courses I should be taking, so it's not just electives. It's a lot of the solid, really well-designed core courses that we have in math and science and social studies and English. So I think the combination that we have grown over the past so many years has really, it's become so advantageous for kids. Now, everyone is aware that we can't have everything we want, and maybe
Right.
you're not gonna get this one that I really want to take. We're going to say you have 28 credit requirements to graduate, but there are other courses you can take if you want to, right? So, right, so there's opportunities to take even more than we're saying you're required to take.
Right.
So if you
I'm
would
just
like
asking
to,
where
you
we
can.
don't need to require by law, we shouldn't. And it should be toward the pathway. Like that to me would be the ultimate Penridge experience, because then we really are meeting all of our kids more individually. And I get what you're saying, you have to make sacrifices. That's life too, 100%.
Well,
Jordan.
We had a discussion because the state minimum is 21 and a half credits for graduation,
Right.
right? But we rejected that, 20, whatever. But we rejected that because we need what we call a Penridge experience, like you said, that we kept it at 24. So,
The state really only requires standards. I know there's always the conversation about standards and credits, and the state really is, they do require you to teach the standards. They do, you have to. They test you on them. So it's really standards-based. The state of Pennsylvania is standards-based. They give you the standards, they say this is what you need to teach kids. We all, in the really great school districts, always go above and beyond the standards, but we do teach the standards. That's what the keystones and the PSSAs are based on, the standards. So they dictate that to us.
But the
It's an
21 required by the state, you must be able to meet the state standards and the state's requirement for 21. So we're already 3 above that.
I think we went around on this one because the state really doesn't want to get into credit requirements. The state really wants you to know they lay out model curriculum for you. They just laid out a new personal finance model curriculum for you, and they give you all the standards in there. It's up to you to say how many credits you want that to be. They don't tell you that.
Right.
You do that. And then that is what we have done here, is that we have created what we believe is all different kinds of opportunities for kids. And if you want to go to the technical school, you go to the technical school. That's fantastic. But we also believe that you should, take English, science, social studies, and be a well-rounded citizen. So that's what it's all built on. And we don't feel like we limit kids. And the 10 years I've been here, there's one student that I remember, and Karen, maybe you remember more. I remember one student who graduated in December.
But I wonder,
Because
but a lot of times they don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. And so if it's mapped out and it's presented that way to families, that's what I think a lot of times you're going, okay, this is what I need, this is what I'm gonna do. And a lot of times you don't ask all those questions. So a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. But I bet if we pitched hey, if you're on the college pathway, but you might not have to pay for 1 year, you'd be like, get in there, do your,
And
get your classes.
Jordan, I think you just hit on the crux of the issue of why it's important to require 28 credits. because you don't know what you don't know. We have an imperative as a school to make sure that we are creating well-rounded citizens who have knowledge of many things, who bring experiences from many places. And the reason that's an imperative is when you look at the evidence, because there's a philosophical difference here. You're thinking in the philosophy of the earlier we let them specialize and follow the pathway they want to follow, the better off they'll be. I personally can speak for myself. I'm coming from the philosophy that when we look at the evidence, that's not true. That the more general skills somebody brings to the table, be it in sports, medicine, career, the better off, the more successful they are. So the more general experience, the more broad an experience we give them, rather than the more focused of an experience while they're here in high school, the better off they'll be in the long run.
But it is
Because the
focused.
fact is that they don't know what they don't know. And kids will happily follow the path that they think is the most interesting to them at that point. Had you asked me as a 14-year-old how I would have wanted to focus my life's journey, I would have still told you I was going to be a paleontologist. I was dead set on it. I was convinced that I was going to study dinosaurs. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what that entailed. I didn't know what other opportunities were out there for me. It's through the process of taking a series of courses that were robust, that gave me a level of experiences in many different things, that I then further found the pathways of realizing that pathway is not for me. This one of teaching history and sharing that passion with people is where I want to be. The more skills we give people,
Right.
the better off they are. The later we have people try to specialize, the better off they are. And the earlier you start to do that, the worse the long-term result, because they get stuck within that narrow focus.
But we have a narrow focus now. Sorry, I feel like it's not the broad. And I'm with you. In middle school, like, you don't know, so I'm like, let's be trailblazers and start pathways in middle school and really.
But remember that 14 is 9th grade as well.
Correct.
It's not just,
See, I think, Brad, to your point, if between kindergarten and the end of 11th grade, we haven't made kids well-rounded, like, we're in trouble. I don't think there's anything saying, okay, you have to stay and take one more math and one more social studies this year. And there's also more and more every year entrepreneurs. There's kids who are motivated, and if they don't have to take them, they could have a business up and running by the time they're halfway through their senior year. And they could do that, maybe with one class in the morning or two as well, but
I was going to say, I had several friends who had businesses in high school and took their course load and did just fine. So that's not restricting them from that.
It may some.
Well,
More individual.
There will always be exceptions.
Right.
I mean, that's the reality.
so I
There
guess the
will always
question
be
is, how do we
exceptions.
deal with the exceptions? Because less kids want to go to college than 10 years ago. More kids want to do their own thing. So do we make the rule that you have to do this, but then everybody who says, hey, but I have this plan and I want to do this, comes in and gets permission, and we just change the rule for everybody who comes in with the argument that my pathway, I think, is going to benefit me more to not be taking an extra math and social studies my senior year. And this is why. We
That
lay
makes
it
me
out.
nervous.
Huh?
Do we really wanna give
Students that option to decide that they don't need
Well, with
further
families,
education?
like with their family.
So
To
decide
me,
they
that's
don't
the
need more
bonus.
than the state requires? Yeah, I think we should.
I feel like we need to maintain a level of academic rigor also though, and it's not just for kids who go to college, like that is for life, it's for a lot of things, like, so I think I'm reluctant to have options that very easily allow students to exit school sooner. I feel like doesn't bode well for our community and for our society, honestly. I think children need that time and they need that learning experience in the classrooms. And if you're finished your credits early, that's wonderful, but there's other classes that you can take then too. Like I'm reluctant to be pushing kids out before they're ready. And I think of my cousin when he was young, like hated school, like just hated it, struggled, smart guy, but hated it. And they even said, this is way back in the 80s and 70s, they're like, just let him get his GED because he wants to join the military anyway. And that's what they did. He had to wait till he was 18 regardless. But like, a but I don't wanna base our whole system around those situations. Like, our system should be for preparing children and students to be in the world regardless of what their path ends up being.
But how
And
do
I
you
don't
measure that
think-
by just saying 28 credits? Like, that's the hard part. You say well-rounded citizens, but it's hard to measure that you're doing that. And like you mentioned rigor,
Yeah.
but I look at rigor as more qualitative in what's in it, not necessarily based off of a number. Like, if you have a higher number, that's not necessarily mean that it's gonna be a more rigorous path.
Right, so now you're looking to the breakdown, rather than just to this whole 28. So you're right, we're looking at this as the whole 28. So then that's the next discussion when we get to curriculum of let's look at that individual breakdown and how it guarantees the rigor.
And it's gonna look different for, multiple kids. That's the hardest part.
But I feel like we need to give this a chance, because I think there is a lot more flexibility in there than any of us are aware of, because we aren't in it. Like, even with my kids in the high school, I know what they're doing, but I don't know all the viable options that are out there for students who are looking for other ideas and other ways to move forward. And there is still the wiggle room of with the 8 credits you can take every year and the 28 requirement, that if there is something that, like, they wanna take a survival class that isn't part of their electives are already being used up from other things that they may have started as a freshman, whether it's a language or band or chorus, they can take it and they'll have extra credits. Like, I'd prefer to go that route than be swapping credits out on like a case-by-case basis, and because it's the same sort of thing. Like, if someone's very motivated for the military and that's something that they're really interested in, then they'll find a way to take that class. The same way kids who are very interested in graduating early will find ways to do it.
I hope that we would
Early,
honor
but-
that. I hope that we would honor that if there's a class and they're able to take that, and they already have required by the state, that we would find a way to honor that as well, if we can, if we're going
As
this
a core
direction.
credit.
If it's one of the ones, yes, that, like, if they already have the required by law,
Yeah.
then I would hope that we would be able to honor that. I mean, there's been many situations in just my teaching career, specifically when I was high school, there are a couple students that would have benefited from,
A couple. Yeah, I'm not
and I'm sure
arguing
multiple.
that.
I'm
But
just
even if
saying,
it's multiple,
that's what I hope that we would
there's
honor that.
thousands of kids in this district, and I'm just very concerned about the bar being too low. That's not what we want either, because now there's the couple, like, watching more than, but if there are kids going the college route, like, Penridge needs to have oomph when they're applying, and like, our degree needs to really mean something compared to other
But
schools out
24
there.
versus 28 is not gonna say, oh, there's no oomph there, like,
That's a big difference. I mean, I don't wanna dumb down the education just for a few exceptions. We should be able to handle those.
But it's not
And
dumbing down. It's like, those are your words of what you're doing, but I don't look at it that way. I wanna be able to be more individualized to each of the students' pathways. That's what it's about, setting themselves up for success.
Yeah, I don't think
Right.
24 versus 20 is dumbing down. I'm more concerned about this path that exits school almost a year early.
But like you said, that would be a couple,
Very
if that would be like a couple,
But
that would be like
if we go
majority
to
if you
block and we
would.
make it 24, that's very easy for someone to do.
We don't wanna make it the rule for everyone.
Yeah, like, I feel like this.
Well, we should ask Palisades what's their percentage of kids graduating early,
That's a
because
fair
they have
question.
24
That's a fair question.
block.
Yeah.
Oh, they've had block forever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you
I
look
think
at
we
it
should move
as,
forward.
yeah, I mean, if you're looking at it, 28 versus 24 for a diploma, us versus Palisades, I mean, I would think admissions officers would look at that 28 as a benefit, as a more well-rounded student. And I mean, even speaking to Leah's point, just setting the bar low, personal experience going through, the technical school, my school, I followed the bare minimum to it. I graduated high school and I was an associate's degree away from having an engineering degree. But there's just no way that my time going to college, because I took the bare minimum classes, that I ever would have been able to accomplish that, because I didn't have the background classes to be able to make that that transition.
But was that, but to pick on that example, were you told by your guidance counselors, like, hey, you're an associate's degree away, and if you did this and this, like, just curious, like, that's where I feel like it is such like a team effort with educating our families and students. Like, were you told in high school that, hey, if
I
you
went
do-
to the bare minimum. I
But
mean,
did-
and I knew that I could go for
We probably need to
engineering
do a
degree.
better job that,
Yeah, I mean, and then, yeah, they
letting you know the possibilities.
being able to explain that to any student, you know, important, but I knew that I could follow that pathway, but it was just more convenient to be to the bare minimum. And you know, going to vote, like I said, going to vote tech, it was more convenient to go bare minimum and take those classes. I think if I would have had that, you know, for whatever term of academic rigor, whether it was the class strength or having that well-rounded education, you know, I think it worked out. It would have been better for me to be able to have that background. And then even for our apprenticeship classes, you know, that I have, having students come in that have that well-rounded, you know, a lot of people don't ever think mathematics when they're looking to be an electrician, but there's a lot of mathematics classes that, you know, they need to take to be able to understand algebra and calculus for doing a job. And if it's not there, I don't think that kids are going to want to take it.
We are increasingly living in an interconnected world. All of these different things you might want to do. And in school we present it like it's a crayon box. Your red crayon's your red crayon, your blue crayon's your blue. Each course is discrete. But in the real world, you need to bring skills from many different angles and from many different subject areas and from many different skill sets into any field and any profession that you're going into. And it's imperative for us that we make sure that kids are prepared to be able to do that when the time comes. When you have a student like Chris who potentially could have pursued that additional engineering degree, had we taken the time to ensure that his education before that was well-rounded and he was provided with the skills that he didn't want at the time, but that potentially he would need in order to pursue what other options would come by him later. Because we oftentimes find ourselves on a path where we think that is our path and need to pivot and find something else that's going to work for us. And we need to make sure that every student that comes from Penn Ridge is prepared if they need to do that or if they want to do that, to have the skills to make that pivot.
I feel like you speak. I feel like you're saying what I'm saying, but I feel like you're not. Like
No, we are.
but
We
you're
just have
interpreting
different
it-
paths to get there.
But you're interpreting it different because you say we need to offer more skills, we need to offer more well-rounded subjects, but we're not really doing that. We're saying you have to take this certain amount. So that's where I feel like we're just saying we need to offer that. I'm
We're
like,
saying
yes.
you need to take this certain amount, and we're saying, hey, here we would like you to take it in this, and this, and this, and this, all different things that give a different set of skills that allows them to pursue.
I think we need to see it with the curriculum, and so obviously like the policy ties to how the curriculum works. I'd like to move forward, because I know we said this even when we went through first read, but it's still true, that this doesn't kick in till 2028, you know, and I don't wanna kick the can by any means, but we do need these sort of requirements in place in order for the block scheduling as it stands to move forward.
Yeah.
So, are we okay with moving forward with this policy right now?
I mean, I'm no, but I know I'm a minority. But
Yeah, no, I was asking for, I'm just saying in general, okay, never mind.
Seems like we have consensus.
Okay, it'll be the same probably as it was for first read, but there's nothing in the wording of this policy that's gonna change between now and the second read. So we'll just keep it moving forward and then we can get into more of the details when we're going through the curriculum components of it. Alright?
I just had a question on 202.
Yeah, well, I was going back to whatever, any questions on other second reads? 202, okay, I have it, wait, I have too many of it right now, hold on. Do you have it? Thank you.
Yeah, up there.
So 202 underwear, again, it has guidelines and then it talks about students experiencing educational instability and then you have the definition there, so thank you for that. But then at the bottom of that part, before it goes into tuition students, it says, a student experiencing foster care may also qualify as a student experiencing educational instability as defined above if such circumstances apply. So where I'm confused is we already, foster care students already have, they're already under this policy, they're covered by this policy. So why then would we need to say that a student experiencing foster care may also qualify as a student experiencing educational instability? Like if they're already covered, why then do they have that additional piece to say they can also qualify as educational instability?
So
Because
we have-
we both would accept, we would accept both.
Yeah, so it's listed under page 2, so the bottom here it says, district shall mediate and admit students. So we include foster care there.
I think it's down,
Yeah, no,
but I feel like because the definition specifically speaks towards homelessness and foster care is different from homelessness. So when I read this, I just saw it as, when we look at the definition of educational instability, and they're saying means student who has experienced one or more changes in school enrollment, et cetera, that a student in foster care could also qualify for one or more of those things. It doesn't that they had to be
yeah.
homeless.
Then I wonder if you
That's
just
how I
added
read
number
it.
3. Because I see, like you're saying, homelessness is already listed.
That's fine.
Yeah. So just add foster.
Number 3, so it kind
But
of fits under.
well, but and the flip side of that, because the definition above says experiencing one or more. If a child is in foster care but not experiencing any of those things, they're not an educational instability, correct? Like
Correct, there, yeah, that's
So
true.
that's why
a good
it's
point.
different.
But then wouldn't you need a side one for homelessness as well? Like if it's going to be consistent?
Well, if you're a homeless, your education, you need it, at least one of these criteria. So if you're homeless, you're automatically in educational instability. Or if
But you're saying you're not technically in it if you're under foster care?
You
Yeah,
might
only
not
if
be.
you meet one of these
Okay, that
other
makes sense, that makes
criteria.
sense.
Depends on
Right.
the situation of the student.
Mm-hmm, sure, that makes sense.
So I thought it was okay the way it read, and I think it's where this policy, because when we're just talking about it in the general, like open text of things where it's not a definition, we do list like homelessness, foster care, and other forms of educational instability. And I think the sort of like shorthand around what we're trying to get at is where it might get confusing, but then again, when you get to the actual definitions, I feel like the definitions are clear.
Okay, then in 204, it is actually listed, the foster care piece is listed as number 3. So then I don't know if you want to, I get it, I get it. It's like, it's,
All right, rewind.
so then maybe we'll just put it like 202 has it, because I get,
That makes more sense.
yeah.
Yeah, hold on, I lost the agenda, so.
So I guess you could, because it says a student experiencing foster care may also qualify as a student experiencing, so not necessarily. So
That they-
what you said is still correct, not all
Yeah.
foster care students would be identified as someone,
For education
going through,
instability.
right,
Yeah.
right, but I think that's why the may also.
Should we just keep it consistent? Like, should we just either make the other one under number 3 with the same may?
Yeah, so what was the one you were just talking
I
about,
believe it
204?
is, still- I believe it is may. So under 202, it does say student may also qualify, so you could actually put that as a number 3, and it still would mean some students do, some students.
It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I'm fine to leave it either way because the same wording, it would just
Yeah.
look the same
Yeah.
in
That
each
makes
one.
sense to
Okay.
make it look.
All right, we'll make it consistent. All right. Anything else on ones that are going through with second read?
For me.
Going once, going twice. And are we waiting for public comment at the end of all the committees now? Okay, so that is the end of policy committee. Thank you, everyone. Who's next?
Activities, right?
All right.
Okay, Ms.
Thank you.
Palmer.
Okay, we're live. Activities.
Okay. All right, we have two things. This one should be short, Mr. Palmer.
You just fixed
Should
it.
go easy on it
Right.
first.
Okay, so we just have two things, the revised calendar. We'll just start with the revised. Mr. Palmer.
So the revised calendar for 23-24. The reason for this is we had a snow day on the 16th of January. So we had a closure on that day. The calendar's been updated. You'll see highlights that the 16th is now blue, closed for inclement weather. That caused us to add an additional teacher day, in-service day, on June 10th. The last day for students will remain June the 6th. We had 182 student days. It now shifts to 181 student days, so we kind of forgive the first snow day. And so we don't have to bump our end of school at all. We're just tacking on the teacher day. In the event that we do have snow closure sometime between now and February the 20th, February 20th is marked as a snow makeup day. That is an in-service day. We would have to close on that day for teachers. It wouldn't affect students. I'm sorry. If we had a closure, it would affect students because we have to turn that into a regular school. The 20th. But right now, February 20th remains the in-service day for teachers, no students. The other shift that was on here was it just shifted the end of the second marking period to the 23rd. Any questions about changes to this year's calendar?
Okay, then we'll move on to the second item, which is looking at next year's district calendar.
So here is the draft of the calendar for the 24-25 school year. Labor Day is on the 2nd of September, which would mean we would be starting the 26th for students of August, would be their first day. We would have a holiday on the 30th of August, which would give us a 4-day Labor Day weekend. If I just quick jump to the bottom, that would keep our last student day on June the 6th. And we would have 2 teacher days, in-service days at the end on the 9th and the 10th of June. So we would maintain that 181 days. If we were to have inclement weather, some kind of closure, we could have 1 snow day forgiveness in there. And you'll see that we still have 2 built-in snow days, one on the 14th of February, the other on the 21st of April. That's the day, the Monday after spring break. You will also see on here we have early dismissal days for our students, the day before winter break on the 20th of December, the 26th of November before Thanksgiving, the 17th of April before spring break, and on the last day of students, which is June the 6th.
It's a long break for Christmas.
It is.
Longer than
I feel like usually it is like that, but this year it was shorter because of the way,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
And the reality is that, you know, if we start sooner, we end sooner. If we start later, we're gonna end later. So we're still gonna fit in that 180 days.
To fit it in, can you explain why, because I know some districts start after Labor Day. Why do we start?
Over the last 10 years, we have started before Labor Day every year unless Labor Day was on the 1st or the 2nd of September. So going back, that would be
Why is that?
2019 and 2020 was like that. 2014 and 2015 15. Otherwise, we would be before. So it's really gonna be trading off where we wanna be, whether we wanna be there that last week of August, or basically running into the second or third week of June.
Mr. Palmer, could you go over some of the temperature issues as well that I asked you?
Yeah, I think one of the concerns is the fact that, you know, if we're in school in late August, or we're in school in the middle of June, you know, when's it going to be hotter? Because we do have that concern. Having worked in a building for 20 years with no air conditioning, it's hot. It does get very hot. For us, Mr. Barrios asked me to look into it. I pulled our local average high temperatures here over the last 10 years for the end of August and July, and they're really about the same. So some daily average highs are, you know, somewhere in the high to mid 70s to low 80s. That's really where we're at. There really isn't a difference between those two in terms of the temperature. So, you know, I think some districts go some way, some go the other. Some districts always start after, you know, I'm coming from a district that always started after Labor Day.
Yeah.
It would just be people to decide what it's going to be.
Is it hotter at the end of August versus early June? Do we
So
know?
can we get more specific on that, not just the whole month, or is that possible to look at? Because the one argument also is, would you rather start at the beginning of the year, where it's a little cooler, and then at the end of the year, we're not doing as much construction, to have the hotter weather?
Well, you know, looking,
I don't know what
the temperatures that I got were from the very last week of August compared to the second to third week of June.
Okay.
And those temperatures were from the airport here. And they were between 75 and 85 degrees each of those weeks over the last 10
So
years.
which one is hot? The same? Or?
Same. They're sometimes June's hotter, sometimes August is hotter.
I just know if you miss a day in the beginning of the year, it's a lot bigger than you miss it at the end.
Over the last 5 years, June's been hotter 3 times, August twice.
I always wondered, like, why start, you know, the last week of August, you have 4 days, and then you're on a break, you know, it's like
That's
an
good for the
interrupted, what's that?
Kind of, younger kids
Kind of
better
go too
for it.
slowly.
Yes.
This is
It
on the
helps us with the
same,
video game detox as teachers.
but this is the same start date as Palisades.
Right.
So they'll be attending, you know, our kids that go to tech school, they'll all be starting on the same day, we'll be ending at the same time. Really, Quakertown is not there yet because they still have contract negotiations, so they're not close to getting the calendar.
What do they typically,
Same.
they say, that
Yeah.
kind of
The 3 sending schools have been the same. So I think if there are changes that, you know, if you guys want to decide to put in a policy, there is no policy right now about our start date for Labor Day. You know, you can say, we're always going to start after, or it could be, you know, if it's beyond a certain date, if it's the first and second, we should start after Labor Day. So that's something that I think you should consider. But in terms of the temperatures, it's
just
the
personal
temperature is really the
preference.
same.
Okay, well, that's important. When it's hotter, then it's just,
Probably have to get the other districts to,
yeah, that's an issue. I
Coordinate
don't,
to make it
I'm not
worthwhile.
suggesting changing,
Right.
just to make sure we're doing the right thing.
right.
And have we done any, or taken any look at adding, and I know that this has come up a couple times, adding Diwali to,
The what?
adding Diwali to the calendar?
Yeah, this year it actually occurs on a weekend. You know, by law, the district has to only be closed on Thanksgiving,
Right.
Christmas, Memorial Day, 4th of July, and New Year's. And then 5 other holidays that you guys select that are called the holidays.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's a local decision. I know some districts do close for it, that typically have a high population of Hindu students in their schools. I think there was a push for it. You could close on that day. You just have to kind of decide where you want to go, push the calendar.
Do you know what our other 5 holidays are right now?
The one right next to it is Election Day.
Oh,
And
okay.
that was kind of the one I was looking at, some of the other districts, because that's the 5th, and Diwali's like usually
On Friday.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're typically closed the Friday before Easter and
Easter.
the Monday after Easter. We're closed Thanksgiving, obviously, but
How
the
much
day
of-
after Thanksgiving,
How much of this has to be, because like when we talk about things like the tech school, et cetera, are we on literally the exact same holiday schedule as Palisades and Quakertown because of the tech school?
I mean, pretty much that's.
we are on the same holiday schedule.
Yeah.
To try and keep it, I think, as close as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And so that we're all kind of doing the same thing, but I think if that's a decision people want to make, we just have to decide where you
'Cause-
want to fit that in. And, I mean, you could go down to 180 school days, but then, we have to kind of we'd be looking at hours. If we have a snow day, then we really have to use those snow holidays.
Well, so election days, because schools and stuff are used as voting places, are any of our schools voting?
Sal?
South is still, you vote at South?
Yeah.
For
Really?
general election.
Yeah.
Okay.
But not during the school day.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's a polling.
When is
It's a
that?
polling.
Was it temporary?
No, I don't think so.
Not
Is it
permanent?
Liz? Yeah.
That's not temporary though.
No, that's not temporary.
Kids go to school.
No, it's always an in-service day.
Yeah, election day is usually an in-service day. I thought it was because we have buildings that we used, well, before it used to be more. Can we have election day and have kids in school?
Yes.
I don't know how that works.
Oh, it's in the cafeteria, I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
That's where the voting is.
Yeah.
I don't know of any schools that are open on that.
Oh, there aren't, that was my next question.
Oh, because it's probably the same situation, there's at
I
least
think
one
it's-
building that needs to be used as a polling station, okay. No, my solution is not.
Well, and just the other thought that I had, or the question I had was, with the law change for the 880 days of the 900 hours, 990 at the secondary, we're still on for the 182, correct? We're not like making a change in that regard.
We're still very good for hours.
Right. I know now it's like one or the other, so. Right.
Is it something also to look at, maybe not for next year, but the year after, to have a conversation with Palisades and Quakertown in regards to this holiday?
Absolutely,
To kind of see if we can
Yeah, Steve.
incorporate that? I think we could do that.
absolutely.
We do obviously give people preference for those days, right?
Certainly, there are a lot of religious holidays. If, Orthodox Christmas is on January 7th, that's not something that we're closed for, but that's something that, we have to consider for the children and the families to say, we're not going to punish kids for being out of school on that day to celebrate with their families or religion.
It's an excused absence.
Yes.
And the teachers help to coordinate if there's not like tests they're missing that day, it's like, right, I think that's the nice first step, at least if we can't get a full day off, if we just let families know that it's considered the same as any other religious holiday where there shouldn't be tests, there shouldn't be a lot of work for your child like that they take off.
Any, good? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Palmer. And that concludes activities.
no public comments, so we're gonna start with Mr. Tim Petty and updates on block scheduling.
Okay, thank you. Also, I brought my backup here, Mr. Gutter and Mr. Hughes, to speak about it, as they've been heavily involved in the process of switching to block. So the information that we're here to present is basically a comparative chart of all of the schools in Bucks County that have also transitioned to block scheduling. We've included Souderton, which is one of our sister schools, and I know Mr. Hughes came through there and we did our visits there. And we included Abington as well. The caveat with Abington, I know we have some Abington experts here, but they have a different numbering system, so it doesn't, that's why we didn't include that at the beginning. But Dr. Scheid asked me to do so. So, I mean, essentially, I know we spoke about this in the prior meeting, but if you take a look at our overall total graduation requirements, they're absolutely 100% in line with every other school district in Bucks County as far as what our graduation requirements, total graduation requirements would be. So I just thought, based on the questions the last time we spoke here and in the last board meeting, I thought it was important to put that information together. The second component of this, and I know you all had time to review this, was you asked us to produce some sample schedules. So, and Mr. Hughes was able to put these sample schedules together. The first one being, you know, in general, 4-year sequence through block scheduling for somebody of an academic schedule. The second one specifically for a student that would be attending tech school. And then the third example would be a possible schedule for an individual who's involved in music. I think it was important to show those visuals. And I'm just going to keep going because that kind of leads us to the last slide, which is that adjustments to the graduation requirements. When we had originally spoken last month, we had that tech path as also being 4 social studies credits. What we were able to discern through conversation, just community outreach from that standpoint, questions from the board, is that by keeping that tech student for 2028 as 4 social studies could potentially inhibit their ability to access other courses, but not because of social studies. It would be because of the wellness credit, the one wellness credit that they would have to access. So in an event to create more flexibility within that, we decided that it would be best to actually recommend that for the 2028 that tech student have a graduation requirement of 3 social studies courses, which would increase their overall credits, elective credits to 11, which really in short would be satisfied by them actually taking the tech classes. But it wouldn't limit them to being potentially having to take that wellness credit in their senior year. It would give them a little bit more flexibility to that. So that was kind of the sequence
So
of
this
the
is where
information.
there were people where there was concern around, you know, like a student who's in tech school and is like the electives that they've committed to, like band, et cetera, their senior year would still be able to try a class, like add an elective or 2, I don't know how they'd be able to add an elective on top of what they've already committed to potentially earlier in high school. I like this.
So the issue here was having to take the wellness credit back here.
Yes, and this year was the first year that tech, and you guys will have a better historical context of this. Students used to be able to take their wellness credit at the tech school. When the tech school transferred that back to us, that's another credit that they have to take here. So it's creating a little bit of a learning curve for us to be able to figure out how to satisfy it. As a matter of fact, they used to serve lunch at the tech school. They have lunch now, which definitely impacts all of the transitions in our transportation and try to manage that. I think we're doing a good job this year, but to honor that and our ability to ensure that they're getting all of the credits and having maximum flexibility within their schedule, that change was definitely something that we would recommend to the board to make as far as how everything is disaggregated.
I don't know if the full board knows why the PE came back. Is everyone aware of that? So the reason why it was pushed back is so right now currently the lunchroom over at Tech is under renovations because they're able to offer more programs and to be able to admit more students in to the Tech. The Tech doesn't have as like big of like the facility to do a lot over there, like at some point like to add one. So that was like an option. So that was like the motivation behind that, so that they could have more kids be able to come into the Tech and take more programs because they're divvying that up within the cafeteria. So that was the motivation behind it, to get more, instead of them being on a waiting list or not being able to get in.
Yeah.
That was the motivation.
Thank you.
So what would, that comes into effect 2028 or?
But that's the same chart. So if you're in a class of 2025, right, it'd be 25 credits, 26,
Okay, even
26.
for both.
Right, so for Tech, we just didn't want to put an added chart in there. You're basically just adding an elective going across.
So would, okay, but it, 2028. I like that, I think it strikes a good balance. In giving options, now we have 11 credits, I think before we had 9 credit options for, optional for Tech school. I think the previous ones were 9.
It was 10.
It was 10, okay, so we're up 10. So that gives them more.
And did we resolve the question that was brought up by a community member in the email about Tech school scheduling? I know I'm asking you.
Actually, I spoke to that parent today
Okay.
and actually followed up with an email. Essentially, this year, a Tech student who is attending Tech misses 3 classes here, covers 3 class periods here, which means that they're getting 3 credits towards their graduation requirements based in Tech. When we transition to block scheduling, a Tech student is going to be missing 4 blocks, which means they get 4 credits. So I think that after speaking, it was the issue of, she was like, how are we supposed to meet these requirements? But she was assuming that they were still getting 3 credits
Okay,
from Tech.
good. Okay, any other questions or comments?
No, I know just because everyone knows how I feel about it, we already discussed it in length earlier. But I always just want to put out there, like I know we only do 1.5 for health and PE, and that was something that I wanted to stay at 2 a while back, just because, you know, it's so good for the, you know, mental health, for physical activity and those kind of things. And I know the teachers in the health and PE department were for keeping at the 2 credits as well. So I didn't know, I don't know if there's any support for re-looking into that at some point, but just wanted to throw that out there.
I would be open to relooking at that.
But not increasing the graduation
And
Say you're gonna push us to 28.5.
I agree.
Now, if I may add to that conversation, because as we were sitting back listening, and I think there's just healthy conversations to have, because there's definitely philosophical differences as far as where we want to go. But as far as creating flexibility, we keep on talking about the minimum requirements. When that overall 28 number is really could be filled with 32 classes. So when you really take a look at what a student options are in a college and career pathways, whether it be a technical pathway, whether it's an academic pathway, there's really 14 electives. And if you break it down, Mrs. Garsh and I were just talking about that, built into the schedule is a complete block that is a semester's worth of courses that the student has 100% open choice to take. Now, does scheduling always work out that way? No. I'm not gonna sit here and lie, all right? But at the end of the day, 28 is the minimum requirements that we're establishing for our community. And you asked about the metrics. And we have 2 teachers sitting here who are presenting a brand new AP curriculum course. There's my metric and our resolve to what we want to do for the community. That teachers are coming in here and we're trying to constantly increase what is already another metric, in my opinion, all right, is our robust course of studies. So when we talk about metrics and why we're trying to do this, it's because we value our teachers and we value our courses, and that is how we're going to produce the best students from a well-rounded standpoint. The other piece, and I know these are just philosophical differences, where does brain science fit into the actual education of students? All right, what we know is that one's brain doesn't fully mature until 25, and I Googled it, so I wasn't just going to start throwing it out. And the first thing that popped up is that female brains actually develop faster than men's. So I'm glad that I Googled it before I came in. Right? So when we want to provide choice, I agree with that. But we have to temper that within the boundaries of what is best for students. Because there are needs, and we joke, I shouldn't say joke, but we've had conversations. When Doogie Howser shows up at our doorstep, we are going to do everything possible to make sure that Doogie can get into medical school, right? However, if we take a look at what our biggest needs are from a student standpoint, it really comes down to providing them boundaries and structures. Because not everybody is going to have the support that they need, but our program of studies and what our educational philosophy has to deal with every student in the building, whether they're AP bound, whether they're tech bound, or whether they're struggling to get to school, right? You know, there are going to be kids who are hyper motivated. Absolutely, but that's where the brain science comes in. We have to take into the fact that we need to be able to support the families, and I love that concept. Yes, you know what we have to do? We have to do a better job marketing and publicizing what our program of studies is. That's why we have our assembly set up not only for our 8th graders coming in next Tuesday, but we're opening up another one just to speak about block to our entire high school population, because we need to get out in front of the community and say, hey, this is why we're doing what we do.
And hopefully have more structure around because I agree with you, structure and boundaries is good, but more with like the pathways, like once that gets bigger and broader.
Well, my suggestion is I'm going to talk to Mr. Dyer and coordinate this and have Mr. Dyer come in, because if you go through our program of studies in the back of it, right, it will outline every one of our courses and how it aligns with the 5 different pathways that are there. But I'd rather have him come out and really speak about how he's trying to develop that program from and I can also say, different meeting, we've allocated more budget, building level budget, specifically right at college and career pathways. So we're going to make that financial investment from a school district aside and say that's where we need to be going for.
Good. Is this document going to be in the program of studies?
Is this?
Yeah.
It already is.
It is, okay.
So we have asterisks next to the areas of contention.
Okay.
That say pending board approval.
Yeah.
Because what we do.
And
Well,
then-
we're moving into course selection,
Yeah.
right? And that time is, we have to be able to tell parents, like
Something,
the
right.
8th grade parents who are moving up, saying, here's the target.
Yeah.
Now, if that line changes for whatever reason, all right, because the other thing that we're gonna dedicate ourselves to doing, specifically with the tech, is what are those 4th year tech students taking advantage of? I don't know, because of our block, we don't know what that's going to look like. Are they working? Are they taking internships? What is that? Because the technical school programs are only 3 years.
Right. That's a
Right,
great
so
question.
how are we supporting those students in those 4th years? Because we might be able to capitalize on different opportunities to help people acquire other types of credits, but we don't have that information.
That's a great question to ask.
One question, block schedule, how many credits would this person earn if they passed all of these courses?
And I'll defer that to Mr. Hughes, but they're 4-year sequences, so it'd be 32.
Correct, yeah, they were all. So this would be a fully maxed out, correct?
Absolutely.
That's what I thought. So they could take early dismissal and not do some of these courses?
It could be, yeah.
Similar to what we have
A
now.
couple of study halls sprinkled in junior, senior year.
And they now have flex time too, right?
Mhm.
Every day.
Something you just said though got me thinking of another reason why I like the 28 credits also, is like kids do need to be exposed to different ideas, but I also think they need to be exposed to different teachers too. And I think there's a lot of students come through with like something that they didn't know they were interested in until they really connected with like that one teacher. And I just don't want kids to give up too soon or so. Like maybe it is that last math class they took that they're like, oh, I really enjoy this because it's this. Or that last social studies where they're like, this history and this teacher is someone I just have really connected with. And so I feel like we don't want to discredit that type of exposure as being very valuable also. And it's not in saying one teacher's better than the other, but just like there might just be more of a connection how that teacher is explaining something and where that child is in their life, you know, that beautiful connection of what the student's ready for and how the teacher's explaining it.
Developmental readiness.
Yeah, and so I just don't want to give up on that too soon. And I think they need to be here with the teachers, gaining those experiences.
Algebra didn't make sense to me until I took a dual enrollment course with an algebra teacher at Bucks County Community College when I was 17 years old. And that guy, and honestly, his teaching stunk.
Maybe
You
they
took a
do pay more
section,
attention.
you took a section, you did the homework, and then you came back and asked questions. For whatever reason, that worked for me. And then like midway through it, it like clicked.
Yeah, we just don't know.
Yeah, I just think that's important also for a child's development.
Anything else on block?
So is there anything we have to vote on the meeting or just the change that?
And just finding consensus.
Yeah.
No, the block, I mean, we're gonna.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys had mentioned like evenings for parents to come in. Those are still on track.
I don't
The
think
13th is our A3 program planning meeting.
Okay.
And then the 15th is sent for all high school parents to come. Good.
So is a new vote required for this?
I don't think so.
It's not, right?
No.
We don't need to
Graduation.
vote on the change from 4 to 3 for tech
Well-
school, right?
We have to update the graduation requirement.
You will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll take it to the board meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
Make
What I
instructions.
don't want to butt in, the vote was for the total, I think.
Yeah.
What we did
This
was.
entire chart we need to vote on.
Entire chart.
We don't have time.
So this will be voted on.
Right, okay,
Well,
good, thank you.
Pam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for staying.
Thank you.
Of course.
Earl, thank you all.
Next up is social studies. Elementary social studies.
This one, or do you want to let Dave go first?
It's up to
Would
you.
that be okay if we did AP?
Sure, absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, we're doing AP. So I'm gonna try to pull it up.
It's
Yep.
the second. Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Vitale?
Thank you. I just want to thank Krista Marinelli and Mason Gilbert for coming tonight. They are the teachers that we are hoping will be able to teach AP Human Geography. And we're really excited to bring this course to you today because we think it's going to be an unbelievable addition to the offerings. Oh, hold on. You have it? I have it on my computer. So here's a program improvement proposal for advanced placement human geography, and the grade levels would be 9 through 12. This is the first time that we are offering, or potentially offering an AP course in the humanities for 9th grade students. Generally, you have to be either an upperclassman or in 10th grade to be able to take those. But this course is open to all 9th through 12th grade students. And it's a typical AP course where it's college materials dictated by College Board. We came to this conclusion after talking about it and discussing it because AP Human Geography is very popular with 9th graders. It's the introduction to AP courses. Students tend to do very well in this course. And so we were curious to see if our students too would want to take it, and we did a survey, and we conducted it this year, and 33% of those students said that they would be interested in taking the course. Now that was 33% of our underclassmen. The seniors and I didn't put it in here because I thought it would be too many statistics, but the seniors, about 65% of them said that they would have taken it if it were offered to them. So we were really excited about those statistics and being able to open that to all of our students. It's a thematic approach course to economic geography, cultural geography, political geography, and urban geography. So it's a little bit different than your typical geography course where you're thinking about map making and coloring your, the shapes of the states, and you're talking about landforms and political maps and versus different kinds of maps. This is much deeper, and it's an opportunity for the students not only to learn those portions of geography that we don't typically teach, but to earn college credit while they're still in high school. And especially for a 9th grader, that's an amazing opportunity. So I'll move it down to the goals of this course, of course, are for the students to have this amazing experience, but to have the opportunity to earn college credit. They don't have to take the AP exam. They're encouraged to, but they certainly don't have to take it. It is going to engage the students in global issues. This course is aligned with not just the PA state geography standards, but the national geography standards and the AP course framework. There are rigorous readings. They're related all college level materials. So these are, this is dipping your toe into what it's like to be a college student with the amount of readings. There's summer homework that is involved. And of course, the open-ended response questions and multiple choice questions that they practice throughout the course. There's content offered in geographical thinking, using maps, geospatial technologies, which we currently do not offer at Penridge. And so that's something that we can explain more after I'm finished if you have questions about that as well. And the thematic structure is what makes that course attainable for 9th graders. We talked a lot about being developmentally ready, and the way that the course is structured in themes makes it easier and more digestible for a 9th grade student. So the course is in the following units. There are 7 units, and here are the units: thinking geographically, population and migration patterns and processes, cultural patterns and processes, political patterns and processes, agricultural and rural land use patterns and processes, cities and urban land use patterns and processes, and industrial and economic developmental patterns and processes.
Can we get an example of all of this?
Of a process?
Like an industrial and economic development pattern?
Yes, so I will defer to Mason Gilbert, who actually has a master's degree in this, and I do not, so.
So, I'm sorry, your question was about Unit 7?
Just an example, I just don't understand it,
So, I mean, you're looking across these different units, and we're looking at industrial economic development, so how did cities grow? right? How does the economic development of the city impact its surrounding community? How does, you know, being a part of that system impact?
So you look at one area of geography and how that industry developed in that area?
Sure, so as Jen said, thematically, it looks as if each unit's gonna be focusing on a different aspect, whether it's population migration or political, agriculture, maybe obviously more rural, right? And then land use, how do we use the land that we live on? How do we make those decisions? How do we come to agreements on what's best? I mean, as we're doing here in this room, we're making decisions on making compromises, right? How do you compromise on what you may want and what someone else may want?
Yeah. So it seemed to me, from looking at the course that, because it's thematic, so if you're looking at industrial and economic development patterns, you're looking at that throughout the world. So you're taking examples from India and the United States and Canada, and so, and it's also very timely and it's very relevant to the students. It's not something, we were talking about this earlier, it's not this boring, not that history's boring because I love history, but it's not this disconnect. Where that is the reality of history, is that it is disconnected from our students because of time. But this is right here and right now. So the information is current and you're going to current places, which also is great for students to give them exposure to other places in the world as well.
Is this the first AP course for ninth grade? Is that what you're saying, or there's others?
In the humanities,
Humanities,
yes.
We only have one other.
One other one
AP Science Principles in Math
for ninth grade?
for ninth grade. That's
So
the
this-
only other AP course
So it's a
offered
good,
to our
yeah,
ninth
nice
graders,
addition.
yes. So this, we're excited.
Yeah.
Another one.
Tim?
Yeah.
Increase our rigor then? Or is
Yes,
it-
it does.
so
I would say it does, yes.
Now this AP rankings, they figure into school rankings, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So the more, is it based on how many you have or just
That and the scores we would get on
The
the,
score.
on the exam, but we're not requiring the students to take the exam.
They
Okay.
actually want ninth graders to take courses. They are really trying to get students to try a course. So we believe the same thing.
okay, let's give
Right.
them another option.
Yes.
So would there be other AP available for ninth graders coming?
We'd like there to be, so.
Yeah, we would love to
let's
look
move
into
forward.
it. Yeah, there are other districts that do offer, AP in ninth grade as well, so. Not too many in Bucks County that offer this particular course in ninth grade. There's only one other one, Quakertown. Right now, there's a few in Montgomery County, but, there are other AP courses in ninth grade that are offered. So the students will be evaluated formatively and summatively as each unit goes on, and of course at the end there's the AP exam. So within each unit and module is built in practice questions, both multiple choice and the free response questions, and they're similar to what they'll see on the exam if they choose to take it.
Even if they don't, they'd have a final exam.
Yes, they would have a final exam because it would be their coursework. So we did a textbook analysis. Kristen and Mason did the textbook analysis with me along with 2 other teachers. We took a look at 3 textbooks: The Cultural Landscape by Pearson, Human Geography, A Spatial Perspective by National Geographic, and Human Geography for the AP course by Bedford, Freeman, and Worth. And we used the textbook evaluation rubric that is standard for the district. It's the same rubric that's used in all of the textbook evaluations that we do. And so we sat in a room and we looked at all of the units, the modules, and we went through the rubric and gave them a score. So our some of the reasoning behind the scores, a lot of it had to do with bias. We were very concerned about that one particular part of the rubric, and some of the issues are controversial, but we felt that some of the textbooks didn't handle them the way we liked them to handle them. So we took note of that, and that was, if you see a low score, that's mostly the reason why. I think the National Geographic scored 30 out of 75 because there were limited depth of knowledge questioning, limited opportunities to enhance reading, writing skills, and very one-sided topic presentation, which I felt uncomfortable with offering that to our students.
The Pearson text did take controversial material and case studies, but some topics were presented, again, with bias. So the textbook that we felt was most appropriate for the students was Human Geography for the AP course. It offers a ton of what we were looking for. So one of the things we looked for in choosing a textbook, so we went with these 3 to even look at because of the reputation of the publishers, the writers themselves. We looked at who the writers were, what their credentials were, what kinds of education they had, and we felt that Human Geography, because they had all of the writers of the textbook were either members or former members of College Board, and they were all experts in geography, we felt that that was a big plus for that textbook. But it also has background information for students who may be younger, who don't have necessarily that prior knowledge, so they provide the background knowledge in each module. There are class discussions with arguments and debates. Since there are issues that could be considered controversial, there's opportunity for the teacher to guide the students in those debates. The units match College Board unit for unit, so all 7 units are exactly the same in the textbook as they are in College Board. The instruction is scaffolded, which I really liked for the 9th graders in particular, so it starts kind of small and then builds upon those topics and spirals them. They have a lot of maps, charts, graphs to read and interpret. They were supporting emerging skills in data and scale analysis, which I think is a really good skill for our students to have. There's a lot of courses that we ask them to take, but we don't ask them often to read charts and read graphs and have that literacy, because there is such a thing as chart literacy and graph literacy, and being able to read those because it's a different type of reading, and this textbook helps support that aspect of it. There are AP exam tips throughout each module, and they give examples of the free response questions with a rubric, which I thought was really a big plus, was they actually gave us a rubric. And the coup de grace of the thing that we liked the best about this textbook was that it had a pacing guide for block. So we said, oh, that's perfect. But yeah, so this is true. This textbook was the truest one to College Board that we saw. And there is one thing that this textbook offers that I want Mason to explain, and I'm not leaving Kristen out, but
You can speak more clearly.
yeah, for sure. The geospatial technologies, I wanted you to explain what that is and how that is going to be offered to our students.
Sure. So I'm Mason Gilbert. Before teaching, following my pathway, all that stuff, I went to Westchester, double undergrad, grad in geography and planning, focusing in GIS, which is the geospatial technology we're talking about. GIS, ArcGIS, Esri. If you imagine Google Earth mixed with AutoCAD and computer science, it's very STEM heavy, something we're really happy about. And I can tell you firsthand from working at the county, having friends that work in the private sector, ArcGIS Online is the cutting edge. It's what everybody uses. So our students getting firsthand experience with this in the classroom is nothing but a positive thing that other kids aren't getting, right? Looking at some of the examples in the textbook, they are similar examples to what I saw in undergrad and grad school. The same layout, the same kind of questions, obviously meant for an AP course, but it had the same feel to it, the same general gist, and I get really excited about it. Like I could sit here, I'm trying to make sure I'm cool, but I sent the most annoying email to Jenna ever with my transcripts and all the courses, like, here's why I went to this class, because I think about social studies kids coming into 9th grade for the first time and having that as their experience, and it really kind of being like a welcome to high school, welcome to social studies kind of moment. Oh, this is what we can do, and then just go from there.
Very much.
Don't worry, you and I can nerd out about our GIS later.
Thank you.
And I didn't even know what GIS was because that was not my pathway. I was more of, you know, the history stuff. So I think it's really exciting, and we all keep saying that we want to sit in on their class and take it. But the teacher ebook too has additional resources that are great. There's overview videos, lecture slides, case studies, activities and handouts all built in there on the teacher's guide. Additional free response questions, field work, so the kids can actually maybe even like take it outside of the classroom. And then after exam activities, which I thought was really impressive because I don't know if you know, but the exam is in May and we go to June 6th. So what do we do with the kids for a month? It's built right into the textbook. So that's why we chose that textbook. And here's the cost breakdown of the textbook, $157.50 times 60. We're estimating maybe 1 to 2 sections now of the AP Human Geography. So, you know, hopefully at some point it'll get bigger, but yeah, we're sending him down to advertise. And where was I? So the total was $9,450 for the textbooks. Then we have the the teacher edition for $100, and that's times 2. And then to send Mason and Kristen to the AP audit training workshop, which is required by College Board, it's $175 per teacher, and they can do that anytime between now and June. There's a lot of dates that are open that they can take that. And we don't have to do a whole lot of curriculum writing because it's all written for us. But what we would want to do is get together and populate Atlas. And in Atlas, we would have all of the units and then a link to the College Board description so that the community can see that. So total cost is $9,950 for this textbook. There are no staffing implications. We wouldn't have to add staff. We're just adding education to our staff. No courses are dropped because of this course. It's not replacing any other course. The project timeline. So below I have a little bit of a timeline, and of course it's fluid, but in February, which is where we're at right now, 2024, we're going to populate Atlas so that we can have that made public when parents and kids want to discuss taking this AP course together when it comes to course selection. So we want to get that up and ready because there's nothing we have to write. Then the advertisement begins with these two going to 8th grade courses and to parent night. That would be my job to really talk up the AP Human Geography course to the 8th graders that come up to talk to us. And so that would be this month. And then March through June, Kristen and Mason will attend one of their AP course trainings. And then August, implementation. And that's it.
I love the block scheduling because those are every other day the AP courses. I know like when kids are older, they're taking more AP classes, it's easier. I'm assuming you guys have mapped out for 9th graders who don't have as many AP courses to kind of mix in together. That there's a pad that they can do to get this course in. Perfect.
Yep, lots of thought went into that.
Awesome.
Are the AP courses, the tests, are they only given in the spring?
Yeah.
Would this have to be a
Yes.
spring class then?
We're offering.
Yes. As of now, we're offering it in the spring because we want the 9th graders to be able to take the 9th grade early American history course first.
Yes.
And then in the spring, they would be eligible to take this.
Oh, so this would be,
Okay.
it's totally an elective. This would like count as a social
I
studies?
apologize. It's not doing the every other day.
No, most of them are running that way.
Oh, okay. This
So
one is
you
the
were right.
exception, yeah.
Okay.
This one is the exception because of that spring portion, and we've discussed it.
Yeah.
We're not, at this juncture, that's where we're offering.
We almost have to for the test, for the kids who want to take the AP test anyway,
Yeah.
right? Because, so you almost have to for the kids who want to take the AP test,
Well, yeah.
because
you
that's a long time to remember it. So would this not count as one of the 4 social studies? This would just be a sheer elective?
I have a question. What is GIS used in, like, industry or just who uses it?
So many places.
Sure, so the emergency services, right, your busing, transportation's here because they'll use it.
They use it now.
So like your location data, so each house has a location and they'll run different programs that's above my pay grade that will calculate what's the best. Instead of someone sitting there with a ruler and measuring, saying, okay,
No, I understand.
it's, you know what I mean? And then, emergency relief, I think that is really powerful. Companies use it, so Wawa's, right? You notice a Wawa every certain distance, but there's not a Mercedes-Benz dealership every certain distance because they have rules and they have to spread out, and that's road patterns and sewer, water. I'm sure Pico uses GIS in their own way. If you can name a industry, I bet they use it.
And Ron, I'll guarantee you've seen an ArcGIS map and not even realized it, because back during COVID, this is the system that was being used to show prevalence rates across the United States of America.
So it varies date on this location?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, so what's really beautiful about it is every point, line, and polygon has its own subset of data with it. So it might just look like a dot, but within it could be an entire Excel sheet worth information. That makes it extremely powerful.
I'll show you some really cool ones I use in class later.
So I think it's a great addition. My one challenge to the team was considering ways to add additional resource, and just on some of those modern day or controversial topics that you mentioned. The textbook felt like on some of those topics it was surface level. But then when I went through the teacher's guide, it encouraged critical thinking, developing those skills for students, debate, and encouraged bringing in other resources. So that's one thing I'd like to, see what you guys can come back with and recommend on that front.
I think that when they take the training, that's where they're going to get the bulk of those extra resources and the support for having those debates, because that really is a certain structure. When you have a debate in a class, especially an AP course, you're going to want to establish classroom management rules, expectations right away, and I'm sure that you're going to get that support. I've never taught an AP course, so I never took those courses, but when I was reading through the requirements, and there's a whole community of people too that we were talking about that you would reach out to.
Yeah, I think like akin to any social studies course, right? We face these issues that we have our students debate, whether it be formally or informally. And so relying on both us as teachers at Penn Ridge High School and supporting that community is important, and then also relying upon the other AP teachers in the county, across the country, and seeing the resources that they provide. It's great to have that network that we can start to build.
Yeah, because I would imagine you'll have students come in with, either viewpoint, and you want them to be able to share that with each other and express that freely, and that lies a lot with the teachers. So.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the critical components of the course in general, which is great to see, because the students can debate those topics with the right norms and managements in place.
Yeah. Good. So, I know you just went through the schedule, but so we're in February, right? So we would look to, we talked about bringing this back for curriculum next month?
It's up to the board. This can move to motion if you're ready for it,
Yeah.
or if you want to have it another month.
Right.
I was getting ready to send an email just with some questions to, for each of the textbooks that you all looked into. Just some more specific information over the bias and how you feel like
I brought extra textbooks if you want.
I was gonna ask that. You have all three of them?
That's why I have the cart with me, because I didn't want to bring
Makes
them.
sense.
I don't have the actual textbook that we liked, because it's over there. So we do have all three of them.
Okay, and then also just, we're, with the scores and where you kind of felt like there was balance for the controversial topics, I'll send that in an email, but that would just be great just to get some of that information, just because that, was just huge, always you know, I'm assuming, I would assume maybe something with, climate change might be involved in, not really, there was like the culture patterns. I don't know if that is more in depth, gonna be in the course and just making sure there's balance showing both viewpoints.
No, surprisingly, COVID was one of the topics that we
What
felt.
was?
It's COVID. And the way it was handled in one of the textbooks, I was not, I thought it was very, I don't know, what did you guys think?
I know, it's hard.
It told a story. Like it, you know, the textbook that we're recommending talked more about how a disease like COVID could spread, right? Instead of talking.
I don't think it mentioned COVID, I think it used Ebola and, yeah, because that is one of the factors of like disease spread, that all three textbooks did talk about that, but the way one of them handled it just seemed as if it was ripe for controversy. And the textbook, like you said, Ms. Batisky, was very surface, whereas if you want to take it deeper, you can. And that's the choice that I think the textbook is giving you, whereas the other one sort of told you what to talk about. And I didn't like that as much. But, well, we all decided not to.
So then for us to approve this, because definitely would like some time to look through that, and then if we're asking them to come back to talk about the other extra resources, the additional resources, as well as when you guys go onto Atlas, will you be including like the debate topics and having that out there? So, you know.
Typically, the other AP courses just have the units listed, the names of the units listed, and then a link to College Board.
Because with AP courses, I know there's like the link, but like you will send the course in for approval to AP, so there's a lot of things that you can, like, yes, there's a lot of the structure piece that you have to have with it, but then also, like, as long as you're hitting under them, like, you can choose a lot of the some resources as long as it goes in that and it gets approved. So I think those type of
They would be
things.
supplemental resources.
So will those be listed?
Yeah.
And then as supplemental, it's not necessarily required.
Right.
So if we're not using some of that to make it as robust, I think maybe just more specifics in how that will be, I guess, within the course. So if we push it to the board meeting now, we're just voting to say we're gonna offer this course. And then will we have to then, again, vote on?
So what makes sense, to come back to curriculum in March and then we vote in April? Does that
I think we need
mess
to know
with
who
your?
can run the course.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
I would support.
I would support the course,
Yeah,
but then if we could come back and have another discussion on, I guess, how it's gonna be, with the resources, whatever is gonna be listed and how it's listed, I think that would be the way I would personally wanna, like, I wanted to offer the course, but then have
And
another
be clear,
discussion.
so we're running the course, no
Yeah.
issue, so we can roll this out to our current people.
Brad, did you go through that book already?
I've had a quick chance to flip through. James had a quick chance to flip through. So,
Okay. Well, when you guys are done, I will borrow it.
of course.
What did you think of it? You used to put a lot of time.
Yeah, just like I said, I think some of the more contentious issues, it was surface level. So I think to have that balance, you need to introduce the other side of that issue. So
Okay, so that, because I didn't think it was surface level.
It's just not delving into cause. It's not getting in depth enough, or.
Yeah, so
It's right next to
Yeah,
you.
Did you feel like it was unbiased or just not
That gives them
deep?
more of a freedom to do that with a teacher.
So having looked at it and looked at some of Christine's comments as we looked through it, like there are certain spots where it will sort of like define what it is, but it doesn't talk about the size of an issue at all. It just says, here is this geographic concept, okay, or here's this concept that's going to be talked about. And potentially these are strands where I'm a teacher and I have students who want to go deeper on that. I might say, like, okay, we have an ability to have a really robust debate here. Or we might just leave it as this is the thing that's defined. Be aware that there are multiple sides to this issue and multiple different opinions to this issue. but is not necessarily delving into what are those different opinions on that issue. It's just saying, here's the geographic concept.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. So one of the topics was effects of migration. There's language around how migration impacts jobs and can create scarcity, causing prices to rise, and it kind of stops there. So, you know, I would be interested in taking that further and talking about, you know, that's called inflation, and what does inflation do to middle-class families, and, you know, that's a richer discussion than it creates scarcity. Like, they might not even understand what
Right.
that means, you know, so the impacts and effects of the topic or the issue.
So then how will, I feel like moving forward, if the other resources are just gonna be supplemental, how will we make sure that we have that, I guess? Or how, I mean, maybe that's a discussion you guys can have and then bring back to us, but that would be something I would be interested in as well.
Yeah. No, go ahead. No, I just want to clarify. That we're talking about instructional strategy and
Right.
we're talking about additional resources. Is that what you need us to bring back in March?
I think just everybody else at the table would, before they feel comfortable fully voting on using a resource, wants to be able to take a look at the resource.
That resource.
Yes.
And then any other topics, Christine, I would be wanting to know if you felt like there were
Sure.
other ones that didn't.
I can leave her
There's an
tabs.
objection later.
Exactly.
So I can leave her tabs.
Okay?
So
Yes.
we're gonna
Thank you.
Support the course.
Yeah, but this, we should provide with the rest of it, if
Yeah.
there's any objection or whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're talking about sort of tier 2, tier 3 issues here. Which is typically not
Okay, let's move on to elementary social studies.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm requesting that we edit the current course that is in Atlas for grades 1 through 5 for elementary social studies. And the rationale for that is several things. One is to prioritize standards. There are, in some of the units, quite a lot of standards. So we would like to go through and pick the ones that are the most important, the ones that we are teaching the most. We'd like to realign some of the skills, content, big ideas, and essential questions, and ensure that the content is age appropriate. Improve the format a bit of Atlas. There's some color coding issues that I would like to correct. And reduce the amount of content in some of the units, and then add content to some of the units. Not necessarily the same units, but some need to be redacted, some need to be added. So in doing that, the best start point would be to return to our previous curriculum work from December of 2022. At that point, we had an elementary curriculum committee that was made up of teachers and administrators and coaches. And we worked to create a scope and sequence for grades 1 through 5, and we completed that work, and it was supported by the teachers and the administrators. And at that point, we did stop. So here I have a chart where on, there's 3 different sections. You have your grade and then what is currently being taught, and that was like the status quo. Those are the status quo units. Then we have what was approved for the 24-25 school year rollout. And then on the far right are the recommended units from that work that we did in December of 22. So if you take a look at grade 1, what we're currently teaching, what was approved, and what's recommended, pretty much the same, not much of a difference there. And grade 2, little bit different, starting to broaden the language a little bit, but really similar to what was approved for 24-25. And stop me at any time if you have questions about what this entails.
I was just gonna say for the end, unless you want
It's up to you. If
It
you,
would-
if you
we
wanna
can go
stop
through
me, you can, or if you want me to go through it,
Yeah, no, maybe just go through it and
Okay.
then,
sure. Grade 3. So the recommended units here are a little different. Geography of the United States, North American Native Peoples, which is different from what they're currently teaching. Currently, it's Eastern Woodlands, Native Americans, and then they kind of go around in a grid in the regions of the United States, but they stay with Native Americans for the whole year. In the recommended units, they would do the North American Native Peoples unit for 1 unit, and then move on to United States government and economics, and then symbols and holidays of our nation. So that's kind of where it veers off. 4th grade, Pennsylvania Geography, History, Government, and Economics. Then we suggested doing a Bucks County history unit, since there's a lot of Bucks County history and there are field trips galore that our 4th graders can take. European exploration and geography, then early settlements and the 13 colonies. And grade 5, the triangle trade and slavery, the Revolutionary War, and the Declaration of Independence. So, a program selection committee, in order to match those units, what we need to do is to find a textbook or a program that best fits that scope and sequence. So we're suggesting that a committee be brought of 10 to 15 teachers, me, the social studies supervisor, 2 elementary principals, a principal to focus on primary and a principal to focus on intermediate, 2 parents, and the school board of directors curriculum co-chairs. And the reason, before I go on to the programs, this is quite different from the committee that we had before. Before we only had teachers and myself and Dr. Ravarchak, and also Dr. Bolton was there for a few of our meetings. But this is more, I really like this committee because it's more robust, and we have 2 elementary principals and 2 parents who would be on the committee, and I think that those viewpoints are very important for the selection committee. So the 4 programs that we would like to take a look at are Nystrom, Young Citizens, TCI, Social Studies Alive, Savvis, My World Interactive, and Core Knowledge. The projected timeline, and of course this is fluid, can change, but in February, we have to, if this is approved, we would have to go into Atlas and then write the big ideas, essential questions, content, and skills for these new units, because that's not in here. Currently, Atlas has what is approved for 24-25, so that we would need time to do the curriculum writing in February. And then in March, we would meet as a committee with program representatives, so those reps from Nystrom, TCI, Core Knowledge, we would meet with them and get, they often show you how the program works, what, if it's a kit, what is in the kit, how the kit works, the teacher's additions, if there's a certain protocol and a certain philosophy behind the program, that's where the representatives will kind of walk us through that. And then between April and May, we'd like to hold multiple meetings to complete the program review, and using the rubric, the same rubric that we used for AP Human Geography would be used for this as well. And then hopefully between April and May, submitting a proposal for recommended programs to the school board of directors for review. So we have some pricing here. These costs are a bit more than the AP Human Geography costs. Nystrom is a kit, and that is a kit per grade, and it comes with globes and maps, and the students can write on the globes and maps. It has like placemat maps, and it's got textured maps where it's like actually a topography map. So it's a little bit more detailed. And then Savvis, they are more textbooks with a student journal. So there's different price points for student book plus the 6-year digital license. It's $93 per student, And then if you only got the student book and 1-year digital license, it's $34 per student. And then the teacher's editions are $242 times 90 teachers. And there's also an activity guide. And I'm not sure if that's optional. We'd have to talk to one of the reps about that as well. So the prices are a bit higher. TCI, they have grades 1 to 2 has student journals plus a digital license, and then grades 3 to 5 have student journals and digital license. They're different prices. So there's $94 for the primary and $105 for the intermediate grades. And I have the number of students there. And core knowledge. So actually what should be corrected on here is that you can purchase for $5.95 the student books, and you can have them in the paper copies, the print copies. So what we did the math, and it was like $13,000.
They're free if you download them.
Yeah, they're downloadable for free, but that's very cumbersome to print, and they're like 50 pages a unit, so that would cost a lot in ink and paper. But they do have paper copies that we can buy.
In addition to this expense, right?
No, we had the wrong expense.
Well, that expense, what I have there is $35 per teacher copy, so I did 35 times the 90 teachers. So yeah, it would be $3,100 for the teacher copies,
Okay.
but then $5.95 for the student copies. And I think that's it.
So these would be what the committee would look at, those 4 options? That's all.
Yes.
Where'd you come up with the committee idea? How did that start? I mean, I like the concept of it just because it involves.
With having parents on the committee?
That's my question today.
I guess we'd have to know how they're going to get selected. That's
The principals, Dr. Scheid emailed the principals and asked for suggestions for parents who would be willing.
We're looking for primary and intermediate. Typically, that is how we solicit parents, is through the building principals.
And it's also part of the curriculum design process with Enridge to have a committee made up of parent, community members too. And that's not uncommon for school districts to have community members on the.
I like that you're involved with the board too, especially.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to keep an eye on bias and all sorts of things. So, no, I think it's better than the school just working by itself and presenting something like the last day.
Yeah.
So I think it's great.
Very similar to what we did for block scheduling last year. That was sort of the model. You know.
That was true.
I mean, I feel more comfortable knowing that the principals are going to be helping to select the parents because it's sort of what their qualifications. So you were talking about how like this has been our selection process. So we've had the parental involvement in the past.
I don't know, not since I've been here, but there are school districts that use parents for committees all the time in situations like this.
And when we wrote the design process, that was part of it,
Okay.
right? Just learning lessons as we've gone along. It is definitely our responsibility to invite board members, parents, to get more input into the process. So that really started the conversation, which then leads to everybody else who's going to come up here and talk about things.
I think it's tough. I understand the intent, and I think it's great to include parents. It's just difficult with having 2 parents, and individuals have different, values and beliefs around stuff. So that could get sticky, but obviously that's going to happen within the 10 to 15 teachers and the elementary principals, and you two might have disagreeing viewpoints. So I get the intent. I just think it can get sticky with.
I'm just gonna slow it down a little bit. I mean, I would imagine if I was one of the I'd start with a ton of questions. Like I feel like that. I still wanted to slow us down. But if there's parents that, I mean, obviously there's parents in the community who are teachers and stuff too. So I feel a little bit better that the principal may have some ideas of someone that could hopefully come in and hit the ground running a little bit.
I think it's great for transparency, involve the public, and it's not something we do behind closed doors and
Right.
everybody's involved, so.
But it's still gonna be behind closed doors, it's not like it's gonna be transparent, right?
Well-
It's not like it's recorded.
No, that's true.
That's
Yeah.
Well, we could if you really want to, but hey,
Yeah.
but everybody's gonna make a rubric,
Yeah.
so we will have that.
Right, we had that for block, and when I ran the middle school scheduling committee, we had parents on the committee.
Yeah.
And there's
the block
two,
was
so like
done
they're
one.
gonna overwrite
Yeah,
something,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Did we have parents on the block committee? I don't remember.
Yeah,
We did.
we did.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was a great group effort.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so many people were involved, and so many viewpoints were discussed, so.
So where I'm at, I don't wanna go on for, but I have a lot of questions, so I don't wanna, okay. So getting to it, like I know the timeline, like I know there was always concerns with the timeline even when we were working on the previous curriculum. So it's interesting how the timelines, seems like it's gonna go just fantastic and solid to May and then be ready to submit for proposal recommended. So that is a little interesting to me. I just wanna comment on that. And then I forgot to ask for the Savas. So I looked at the Nystrom and the TCI. Core knowledge I'm familiar with, which is one that you know I do really like the most. I think there is the most balance with that and the most kid activities and just different things like that. But TCI, just for those that may not know, we looked at TCI and TCI/Social Studies Alive, the same program. We looked at that, I believe, in early 2021, before Mr. Talley, you were here, and it did not get approved by the board, and it was mainly due to not having enough balance as well as not being age appropriate. So if I could, I just wanted to share some notes from TCI that we gathered before, where it's not necessarily balanced, where there's an inauguration for Biden and speech just from one side of the aisle. There's also a section against the Second Amendment. It points out that back in 1789, Americans wanted them to defend themselves and remembered when they needed to use them against the British troops. People also needed them for hunting, for food, and to protect themselves because that was before the police. Now many question if everyone should be allowed to have them because of the violent crimes and accidental shootings. They think laws should control who carries guns. Others think citizens shouldn't lose the right to have any type of gun just because some people misuse them. So there's that. It's like it's kind of pushing the gun control and not having like the balance or having more. It's almost like somebody's opinion instead of like putting it out there as fact when talking about the history. They just don't even try to have an opposing argument there. They talk about how the court rules on Trump action. And then there's parts where they actually glorify Britain as if they protected the Native Americans from the settlers. And then there's actual arguments for and against independence from Great Britain. So it's almost like making it seem like maybe America was a bad idea. Like it's not like blatantly in your face, but we're talking about elementary. So there's those pieces where there's not a lot of balance within the social studies, the live piece. Also for the young,
I'm glad you're bringing it up. When I went to the Social Studies Convention in the National Council for Social Studies in I think October, Kristen came with me, or November, I can't remember. Anyway, I went right to TCI. They have, they're all there, their vendors are all there. I made a beeline to TCI because I knew this was on our minds, and I wanted to ask them, because the reps know that they worked with us, and I wanted to ask them what it was that didn't work. And they said, well, we have a new edition. So what we have upstairs is the new edition, so I don't know if they've changed any of those things, number one. And number two, they said to me, have your teachers look at those same things and see if those are the same things that they don't like about, this new edition, because I think it's the third edition.
Okay.
So there could be differences there. That's why I said, you know what, should we bring TCI in? Should we not bring TCI in because of that? But with this new edition, I thought, well, there could be something else there that is good, or there could be something we could at least compare Nystrom with.
So if it's something we are not sure we like or dislike at this point, it might be worth looking into that third edition and seeing if maybe those things have changed. I don't know if anyone else complained about those, or because for them to have to write another
Edition.
yeah.
Like a.
I
they
would think
changed
some
some
things would be changed and that they would have taken some of the criticism into account.
Okay.
So that's something I think we should look for, is are
Okay.
those things when we're looking at it.
And
Absolutely.
I'll just send you my notes, because I have some of the
Yeah.
page numbers, because then there were also other things, like some other school districts rejected it as well due to some of the age and appropriateness, so that would be great to look at
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah, they were very, they were like, yeah, we're not sure what happened, but this is a brand new edition, so they have a couple of new things. I just wanted to tell you that because I was very conscious of what had happened before, and I wasn't here, so I don't know all of those details. But I think it's very important to look at all of those aspects. And even if something we looked at before is not something we liked, it's still, we can use it as a comparison. And that's why the textbooks for the AP, I thought it was great that the other two were something I wouldn't want to use. Because then when I saw that one, I thought, oh, something that they're like listening. Like this seems to be more like what we're looking for. So thank you for sharing that.
Appreciate that. And then also, not so much on the appropriateness for like this part, but with TCI, like there's a lot of like the readings, and I think of like the younger like kids, like second grade, first grade, and they're like still learning to read, so it almost would seem like a waste of money to pay for some of those resources when they're learning to read. So again, I feel like it's not as much like activity based, where I could see like TCI maybe for the older grades if it's balanced and appropriate, but just for the younger grades it seems like it might not be appropriate because they're just learning to read still.
And we talked about there might be an issue where one program might work for the primary grades but doesn't work for the intermediate grades, and so maybe that's something we'll have to consider as a committee. Do we maybe purchase something for just first and second that's more age appropriate? So.
Okay, and that's what I have for TCI, and I just wanted to go on to Nystrom.
Okay, yeah.
Because that, unless anybody else, sorry guys, I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering, where can we see TCI?
Sorry, that would be good to know, because you can just email, sorry, Kath, you can answer the question, but, because I had to learn that too, I'm like, how can we see that? I remember the fourth, and then they're more than willing to be like, come pick it up, because I was just like, hey, can I look at it?
all the texts.
We have it all upstairs,
Yeah.
so you're welcome to look at it.
We have different grade levels, I gave you fifth grade, so you can compare.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Nystrom, I looked at, and I feel like, I mainly had like the fifth grade, but then I also had like brochures of like what it offers in first grade, like an overview. So, I mean, a lot like with the history, everything is mainly like geography and landforms, except for fifth grade. Fifth grade's like the history, and then I feel like it's not very in depth. So, I feel like there's not like that hearty like rigor of like American history with the Nystrom piece. And to be honest, like I'm just being honest, I feel like there's a little bit of like virtue signaling within the Nystrom a little bit with, it's almost, there's some parts that it's not in your face, but it feels like it's passively going through somebody's like ideals and like their own kind of putting it out. So, and maybe there's balance there, and I just couldn't see because I didn't have all of them in depth. But there are like those cards that you hand out, and I'll just do a couple. I won't bore you, but I'll probably email you guys just if you can look into it to see if there's balance. But
Wait, Jordan, so you just saw the textbook for one grade?
the fifth grade, but then I looked at, there was like I can get it out real quick. They have these cards.
Oh, I got you, okay.
Like it was like young citizens, but then it would put it kind of like a comprehensive look at like grade 1 and the curriculum components, and it would just be like basic and go like just like short and descriptive. So I couldn't like look at the books or look at them, but it had me just questioning some of them. So, but they have like the task cards that they give the kids, and they're cool. Like they're nice printout. It's a good visual for like elementary, but so there's a part on a climate change protest, which is fine. but then is there like a show of a protest from the other side? Like Greta Thunberg, I think they showcase her. So just looking at that, and it's mainly to talk about the word protest and to kind of like define that. There's a lot on like different languages that we offer in America, which is great. But do they discuss like the mention of like the history of like the English language and the main language and like the importance of that when the founding fathers, when everything was going into place with that. There's also, so they talk a lot about Native Americans, but they kind of talk about them as like one whole group, and each tribe, like they all sided differently. So like, do they discuss that? Do they go into those type of and I know it's elementary, so you want to make sure it's age appropriate. That when they talk about the Civil War, and do they talk about how like some of the northern colonies began abolishing slavery during the war? Like I don't know if that's discussed as well. Those are just a few notes. I can send more of them to you, but again, it's just more of making sure there's that balance and just providing like, I don't know, just not as like on the surface as from before, just getting more in depth. So just, that's the part with like the Nystrom that concerns me, and just that 5th grade is the only grade that they kind of really go into history. I get like all the geography pieces,
Yeah,
and I
it's
know
very
we have short
geography.
time. We don't have a lot of time. I agree that the maps and stuff that come with, like they have a lot of cool hands-on
Yeah.
stuff. It's very cool for elementary. Those are just my notes.
So Jordan, may I interrupt to ask a question? Would you suggest maybe adding something to the rubric of suggestions of areas where a resource might need complements in order to bring balance?
Sure.
So like that way when we're looking at a resource, we can identify, because any one of these is gonna have shortcomings.
Right.
Doesn't matter what resource you're gonna look at. Every single resource is going to have shortcomings. It's why when you set up a course guide that you have those secondary resources and stuff like that, where a teacher is going to bring in something because they notice a problem. They're like, this doesn't really, it's not doing it justice. We need something new. They're going to add something, and it doesn't always come to us for approval. Sometimes it's just, hey, we needed this, and so we've added it. And that tier 2 resources is something that a teacher can pick up. So just figuring out from the start where, since we know that we're trying to sort of, in some cases, square peg round hole. What are the areas where we are going to need to supplement? And I think that's something that we can look at in a curricular review process, where we go, here are areas of need within this resource as a part of the suggestions we're making.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah. We have to prove that it is balanced.
Right, and that even like after you guys meet with a committee, if they're, because some of like the controversial topics, it would be great to show like, you know, here, I don't know, is how we're going to go forward with this. This is what are some of the expectations of how teachers, we would like them to teach it. Like you don't have the freedom to do it, but just to make sure that there's that, you know, balance.
Yeah, and so you're saying identify the topics?
So like, so we're going to be sitting there with 10 to 12 teachers,
Yeah.
2 principals, 2 parents, 2 curriculum co-chairs. We're going to be bringing all sorts of different perspectives. We're going to be bringing huge numbers of years of teaching experience to this committee. We as teachers can have the ability to look and go, I'm fairly certain I'm going to need something here to help us. And start identifying that as we look at the resource in the first place, so that we can then plan accordingly. We can know where the areas are that we're going to want to supplement, and we can even start suggesting those supplements right from the start in course planning.
Good. Anybody else?
No, I like it.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So final agenda item for tonight. Dr. Shai.
I was asked to talk about the curriculum design process.
Yes.
And I'm going to start by just thanking you so much for approving the supervisors and coaches. So I will talk about the process that we have in place, and we'll talk about how we've structured our curriculum in Atlas, and how we keep internal documents of what we have done and where we're going. And then ultimately, I will come back once we have all supervisors in place, so we can take the look of where we're going over the next couple of years. So really, the design process we have put in place it is uniquely different than most. You know, you'll see a 5-year plan, what does your curriculum plan look like in 5 years? And what we did was, we started looking at the students, knowing that they were changing, and decided to have a reflective responsive process. So, this really, the design process and practices really is philosophical, talking about the comprehensive approach that we look at, our commitment to excellence, and how we adapt for students, and each student is important and matters, and that every learner receives the tools that they need to thrive, actually. And so that's philosophical on what really brought us to the curriculum writing process, which, I don't know, is this in here? Do you have this here, Chester?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the this one. Yeah, that one, and then where am I gonna go? Oh, thanks. All right, so here's the curriculum process. So what we have are teams of teachers, the supervisors are there, coaches are there, there could be coordinators and administrators, and we start with the standards. It's what do we need, what do students need to know and be able to do at the end of the course. So teachers are given the standards for Pennsylvania. Then teachers work together, the team works together on the big ideas and the essential questions to establish the why and the what of the course. So they're big ideas, essential questions. What should students really grapple with in a course? That's what they're designed for. Then they'll take a look at the content, and if you, I can go to the next page. Is that the next one? Chester, can you do that for me? They'll take a look, and it's designed the same way in Atlas. They'll go to the content and skills. They'll say, what's the what do we have to teach? What are the skills that are, thank you, what are the skills that are most essential in teaching the content? Can you see that? This is what it looks like in Atlas. It's all color-coded that way. Thank you. Right, so you'll see where the standards are, and then the assessments, which aren't public, obviously. But here, everything is color-coded in a big idea and the essential question. And then underneath that, you see the content and the skills, and they're also color-coded. So anyone picking up the document says, oh, well, this is the big idea, and these are the questions we're asking. This is what kids need to know, and these are the skills we're going to develop to get them to know that. And then from there, we talk about formative assessments along the way, how are students doing along the way, and then what should the summative assessment, the end of the unit, what should that look like? What are we looking for? What are our look-fors? And a lot of people go in the other direction. They look at assessments first and they work backwards. Sometimes, right, it's a fluid process. It doesn't always follow this. But these are the components of it. We talk a lot about learning experiences, and that's like hands-on activities and how students will actually learn what we want them to learn. And this is the most exciting part of our process, that last part. It's the reflective process. Ours isn't. We wrote the curriculum and it goes in a drawer. Ours is always at teachers' fingertips, and we bring the teachers back who teach the same course, and they look at it together based on how students did. That's the part that's responsive. You will look across 3 classes that are teaching that same course, and the students didn't do well in a certain area. So we know that's something we need to work on. But equally important is, maybe 2 classes did really well, but this one didn't. So what are you doing that I can do so that we all make students successful? That's the part that's responsive and reflective. It is changing. The resources aren't necessarily changing. If they do change, and they have to change, we're coming to you to get approval for that. It's really about designing questions, designing experiences to help students learn. So that's really our process. And then we come to you. We come to the curriculum committee, so you're all well aware of that, and then we move to motion, and courses are approved. So I'll show you this document. because this will give you perspective, at least from January of '22. This is how we keep an internal document that we're just gonna make public because it's helpful for everybody to see it. Well, the way we worked this was, we would say the date we were going to committee. So if you look at 2/7/22 at committee, it was a math, from the math department, personal finance course, and we presented the course. When it turns to green, it means it went to the board and it was approved. That's how that works. So now we kept track of all the courses that we worked on, presented, approved, presented, or not approved, but these were all approved, and that's how this document works. And you can see what we have worked on over the past couple of years. And then down here, if you go to the last part of this, you'll see what we did tonight. The social studies with the AP Human Geography, that would be the board approval if it was approved. Now, we're not going to do that because we're coming back again for that course, so that won't look like that. It'll be, I guess, in March. But that, you get the idea, right?
Yep. So
That's
along the
helpful.
lines of the policy document, you know, making this public and the public can follow along and see that's moving
So
through.
that way, everybody knows and we keep track of it.
Right.
What we will do, though, is give you that longer range look.
Yeah.
So that you'll know next year, this is what is likely to come for us. It doesn't always work out that way. But at least, once I have all 4 supervisors together, I know we're going with math and science. We already know what we're going to do in social studies and English. But we'll come back and we'll show you that by year. So that'll kind of give you a full scope of expectations from here to the end of this year and what we're hoping for next year.
I think that's great because the board can have it looking out, so we don't find out about it when it's coming up for approval. If there's a directional change in resources, then we at least have that visibility out in a few years. I think that's absolutely.
Wonderful.
So the science supervisors comes to us sometime in March, right?
Science, I think, yes, beginning of March, right?
And then the math,
Beginning
and then math.
Science?
I'm sorry,
Yes, the other
it's been a
one,
long
yeah.
day.
Yeah, I think science, she's gonna start in March and her
March,
math
and
in
then-
In April, and so once they're on board is when you're saying you'll come back with.
I really want to at least get that perspective for all of you, for where we're going this year, and then also where we're going next.
Yeah, no, it's important that the public too knows where we're, because otherwise they just see it when it comes up on the board. I love that, more transparency,
Yeah.
everybody knows what's going on, so it's great.
No, my pleasure.
My only comment too is on like the standards that I know that we base everything on, but just like with the steel standards coming out, which might be helpful too with that document, which is awesome to see. But because we don't use all of the standards, just like Jenna was just saying, like she's gonna get rid of some standards. So the steel, I know there are some controversial standards on there, so I think it'd be helpful to see like which ones are we targeting.
Absolutely.
That would be great to see as well,
Yeah.
just so we can ask questions.
And you know what, Mrs. Blumgren, we'll definitely identify those, that-
Okay.
and when we come to you, you'll see them.
Okay, perfect.
Maybe that would make it so much easier.
Great, thank you.
Any final questions? Good? Okay.
There's no comments.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
comment.
yeah,